The woman I buried 3 years ago is staring at me from a billionaire's wall, but her name is all wrong. That's the moment everything I thought I knew shattered. One delivery, one portrait, one impossible truth that turned my grief into something I couldn't name. If you've ever loved someone and wondered if you really knew them at all, stay with me. This story goes places I never saw coming. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city. I want to see how far this reaches. Because what I found in that mansion didn't just change my past, it rewrote my entire life. The rain had that particular November quality. Cold enough to sting, persistent enough to make you question every choice that brought you outside. Ryan Hale shifted the package under his arm and checked the address again. 2847 Belmont Ridge. He'd been driving delivery routes for 3 years now, and the rich neighborhood still made him uncomfortable. Not because of the money itself, but because of how it sat there, quiet and certain, like it had always been there and always would be. The Arden estate sprawled behind iron gates that opened automatically as his van approached. Motion sensors, probably. Everything up here had motion sensors. He'd stopped being impressed by the third mansion on his route. The circular driveway was wet slate, pristine even in the rain. Ryan parked, grabbed the package, some art gallery shipment, fragile as hell according to the label, and jogged toward the entrance. The front door was one of those massive wooden things that looked like it belonged on a castle. He pressed the doorbell and heard chimes echo somewhere deep inside. 30 seconds. A minute. He was about to ring again when the door swung open. The woman standing there was maybe 50, dressed in black slacks and a cream sweater that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Her hair was pulled back severe, and her eyes were red-rimmed. Recent crying, Ryan cataloged automatically. He'd gotten good at reading grief. "Delivery for Victoria Arden," he said, holding up the scanner. She didn't look at it. "That's me." He handed her the device. "Just need a signature." Her hand trembled slightly as she signed. Ryan pretended not to notice. Rich people cried too. Rich people lost people too. He'd learned that the hard way. "Thank you," she said, taking the package. Her voice was hoarse. "Would you mind bringing it inside? It's for the gallery, and I'm not supposed to lift anything heavy." Ryan hesitated. Company policy was clear about entering residences, but the woman looked wrecked, and the package was awkward, and he had a 20-minute buffer before his next delivery. "Sure," he said. The entrance hall was exactly what you'd expect. Marble floors, chandelier the size of his van, staircase sweeping up to the second floor like something out of a movie. But Ryan barely registered any of it because his eyes caught on the portrait. It hung on the wall to his right, spotlit like a museum piece. Oil painting, maybe 3 feet by 4 feet. And the woman in it? Ryan's hands went numb. The package slipped. "Careful!" Victoria lunged forward, catching the corner before it hit the floor. "Please, it's—" But Ryan wasn't listening. He was staring at the portrait, at the face he'd memorized in the 2 years they'd had together, the face he'd kissed goodbye the morning of the accident, the face he'd identified in the morgue. Emma. His Emma. Same auburn hair that caught light like copper wire. Same small scar above her right eyebrow from a childhood fall she'd never fully explained. Same slight asymmetry in her smile that made you feel like you were in on a private joke. Same everything. Except the brass plate beneath the portrait didn't say Emma Hale. It said, Catherine Arden, 1987 to 2012. "What?" Ryan's voice came out wrong, strangled. "What is this?" Victoria had set the package down and was looking at him with concern. "Are you all right? You've gone completely pale." He pointed at the portrait with a hand that wouldn't stop shaking. "Who is that?" "My sister." Victoria's expression shifted toward confusion. "Why? Do you know her somehow?" Ryan couldn't form words. His mind was doing something it shouldn't be doing, making connections that didn't make sense, couldn't make sense. Emma had died in 2015. The brass plate said 2012. Different year, different name, different, but the face. The face was exactly the same. "I need to sit down," he heard himself say. Victoria moved quickly, guiding him toward a bench against the wall. "Put your head between your knees. Should I call someone?" "That's my wife." The words came out flat, factual. "The woman in that painting is my wife." Silence. When Ryan looked up, Victoria was staring at him like he'd started speaking in tongues. "That's not possible," she said slowly. My sister disappeared in 2012. She's been missing for 13 years. Missing? Ryan's laugh sounded like something breaking. No, that's... Her name was Emma. Emma Hale. We met in 2010. We got married in 2011. She died in a car accident in 2015. He was reciting facts, holding on to them like a drowning man holding rope. We have a son. He's 9 years old. Victoria's face had gone white. Stop! I'm not crazy. Ryan pulled out his phone with trembling fingers, scrolled to his photos. Look. He held up the screen. Emma laughing at the beach, hair whipping in the wind. Emma holding their son in the hospital, exhausted and radiant. Emma at their kitchen table, caught mid-sentence, eyes bright with some story she was telling. Victoria took the phone. Her hand was shaking worse than his now. Oh my God, she whispered. Oh my God, that's... Where did you get these? I took them, Ryan's voice cracked. I took them because she was my wife, because we had a life together, because... He stopped. Victoria was crying, silent tears streaming down her face as she scrolled through his photos. You're sure, she said finally. You're absolutely certain this woman was your wife? Yes. And she died in 2015? Yes. Victoria handed back his phone and walked to the portrait. She stood there for a long moment, not speaking. When she turned around, her face was composed in that particular way people get when they're barely holding it together. My sister's name was Catherine Marie Arden, she said. She was 25 years old when she disappeared. March 17th, 2012. She left her apartment in Boston, told her roommate she was going to the library, and never came back. The police investigated. We hired private detectives. We searched for years. Her voice was steady, clinical, like she was reading from a report. We never found any trace of her. No body. No evidence of foul play. No activity on her credit cards or bank accounts. She just vanished. Ryan's mind was working frantically, trying to make the pieces fit. When I met Emma, she told me she didn't have any family. She said her parents died when she was young, and she'd been in foster care. Our parents are alive, Victoria said quietly. They live in Connecticut. They've been waiting 13 years for their daughter to come home. The floor felt unstable. Ryan gripped the edge of the bench. This doesn't make sense, he said. Why would she? People don't just erase their entire lives. They don't. You'd be surprised what people do, Victoria interrupted. Her voice was bitter now. What people run from. What was she running from? Victoria looked at him for a long moment. That's a complicated question. I think I deserve a complicated answer. Ryan stood up. His legs were steadier now, adrenaline burning through the shock. The woman I loved, the mother of my child, apparently lived an entire life before she met me. A life she never mentioned, not once, not even... His voice caught. Not even when she was dying. The memory hit him like it always did, sudden and complete. Emma in the hospital bed, machines beeping, holding his hand. Take care of Jamie, she'd said. Promise me. And he'd promised, and she'd closed her eyes. And 6 hours later, she was gone. She'd had 6 hours. She could have told him anything. She could have told him the truth. I'm sorry, Victoria said. I can't imagine what you're feeling right now. Ryan laughed, and it came out harsh. Can't you? You just found out your missing sister was alive for 3 more years. That she had a husband and a kid. That she built a whole new life and never contacted you once. Victoria flinched. Fair point. They stood there in the entrance hall, 2 strangers bound by the ghost of a woman who'd apparently been a stranger to both of them. We should talk, Victoria said finally. Properly. Not like this. She gestured at the space between them, at the portrait, at the whole impossible situation. Do you have time? Ryan checked his phone. He had 14 minutes until his next delivery, and 6 more after that, and then he was supposed to pick up Jamie from soccer practice. No, he said, but I'll make time. Victoria's study was warm wood and leather, the kind of room that smelled like old books and money. She poured 2 glasses of scotch without asking if he wanted one, handed him one, and sat in the armchair across from him. I haven't had a drink at 2 in the afternoon in 15 years, Ryan said, staring at the amber liquid. special circumstances. Victoria took a long sip. Where do we start? You tell me about Catherine. I'll tell you about Emma. We'll see where they overlap. All right. Victoria set down her glass. Catherine was born in 1987. I'm 5 years older, so I remember when they brought her home from the hospital. Tiny thing, screaming her head off. A smile flickered across her face. She was always loud, always present. You know those people who walk into a room and everyone notices? That was Catherine. Ryan thought about Emma, who'd moved through the world like she was trying not to disturb it, who'd spoken softly and laughed quietly and seemed most comfortable when people weren't looking at her. Our father built this company, Arden Holdings, from nothing, Victoria continued. Real estate development mostly. By the time Catherine was in high school, we were wealthy, very wealthy. She grew up with everything. Best schools, best clothes, a trust fund that could have let her do anything she wanted. And what did she want? Ryan asked. Victoria's expression darkened. That was the problem. She wanted to be normal. She hated the money, hated the attention, hated being Henry Arden's daughter. She fought with our father constantly. About everything, how we made our money, who we did business with, the environmental impact of our developments. She was passionate about it. Righteously angry, the way young people get when they first realize the world is complicated. Ryan tried to imagine Emma angry. He couldn't. She'd been gentle with everything, with him, with Jamie, with the stray cat that had shown up on their porch and never left. When she went to college, NYU, art history, she stopped coming home for holidays, Victoria said. Said she couldn't stand being in this house, couldn't stand the hypocrisy. Our father would show up at her apartment trying to reconcile, and she'd refuse to see him. It was... She trailed off. It was ugly, for years. But she didn't disappear then, Ryan said. No, she stayed in New York. Got her degree. Started working at a gallery. I thought she was building her own life, that eventually she'd come back, or at least make peace with us. Victoria picked up her glass again. Then, March 2012, she called me. First time in 8 months. She was crying. Said she'd done something terrible. That she couldn't fix it. That she was sorry. Ryan leaned forward. What had she done? I don't know. She wouldn't tell me. I tried to get her to come home, but she refused. Said it was too late for that. The next day, she disappeared. And you never found out what happened? What she'd done? Victoria shook her head. The police investigated her apartment. Her laptop was gone, and she'd withdrawn $5,000 from her savings account the week before. Everything else was there, clothes, books, her phone charger, like she'd just stepped out. She paused. We thought maybe she'd been kidnapped, or worse, but there was no ransom demand, no body, just nothing. Ryan thought about the woman he'd known. Emma had been careful with money, not extravagant, but not particularly frugal either. She'd worked as a freelance graphic designer, odd jobs mostly, never anything that paid well. They'd lived in a small apartment, drove an old Honda, cut coupons for groceries. She'd had access to a trust fund and lived like she was broke. When did you meet her? Victoria asked. You're Emma. October 2010. I was working at a coffee shop in Portland, Oregon. She came in every Tuesday and Thursday, always ordered the same thing. Black coffee, blueberry muffin. Took her about 3 weeks to smile at me. Another 2 to tell me her name. Emma, Victoria said. Emma Hale. She said she'd moved to Portland a few months before. Needed a fresh start. I didn't push for details. Ryan ran his hand through his hair. I'd lost my mom the year before. I wasn't in a great place. Maybe that's why we connected. 2 people who understood grief. Except she wasn't grieving, Victoria said quietly. She was hiding. The word hit like a slap. Ryan wanted to argue, wanted to defend Emma, wanted to say Victoria was wrong. But the evidence was staring him in the face. A woman had erased herself so thoroughly that even the people who loved her most never suspected. We dated for 8 months before she told me she loved me, Ryan said. Another 6 months before I proposed. She cried when I asked. I thought it was because she was happy. He laughed bitterly. Maybe she was crying because she knew she was lying to me. Or maybe she was happy, Victoria said. Maybe that was real. How can any of it have been real if it was built on a lie? I don't know. They sat in silence. Rain pattered against the windows. Ryan finished his scotch and didn't feel it. "I need to see everything," he said finally. "Everything you have about Catherine. Police reports, photos, whatever the private detectives found. All of it." "Why?" "Because I need to understand." Ryan met her eyes. "I need to know who the hell I was married to." Victoria studied him. "And if you don't like what you find?" "Too late for that." Ryan stood. "I'll come back tomorrow, after I drop my son at school." "Your son?" Victoria's expression shifted. "Catherine's son. Jamie. He's 9. He looks like her." Victoria's breath caught. Would it be possible to meet him?" Ryan's first instinct was to say no, to protect Jamie from this mess. But looking at Victoria's face, at the desperate hope there, he couldn't. "Maybe," he said, "eventually. Let me figure this out first." "Of course." Victoria walked him to the door. "Ryan." He turned. "Whatever she was running from," Victoria said, "whatever she did, she must have loved you very much, to give up everything for that life." Ryan didn't know what to say to that. He nodded and left. The drive back was automatic. Ryan's hands worked the wheel, his foot the pedals, but his mind was somewhere else entirely. 13 years. Catherine Arden had been missing for 13 years, and for 3 of those years she'd been Emma Hale. His Emma. What about the other 10 years? The question lodged in his brain like a splinter. She disappeared in March 2012. He'd met her in October 2010. 2 years before she vanished, Emma had already existed, already had a social security number, a driver's license, a history, which meant Catherine hadn't just run, she'd planned. Ryan pulled into the parking lot of Jamie's elementary school 10 minutes early. He sat there, hands on the wheel, trying to reconcile the woman he'd known with the one Victoria had described. Loud, present, righteous. None of those words fit Emma, unless Emma had been the person Catherine became when she shed everything that made her Catherine. His phone buzzed. Text from his supervisor. "You missed your last 2 deliveries. Everything okay?" Ryan stared at the message. Everything was the opposite of okay. Everything was... The passenger door opened. Jamie climbed in, soccer bag slung over his shoulder, grass stains on his knees. "Hey, Dad? You look weird." Ryan tried to smile. "Thanks, buddy." "Like, sick weird. Are you sick?" Jamie reached over and pressed the back of his hand against Ryan's forehead, the way Emma used to do. "You're kind of clammy." "I'm fine." Ryan started the car. "How was practice?" "Good. Coach says I'm getting better at defense." Jamie buckled his seatbelt. "Can we get burgers?" "Yeah, sure." They drove to the diner 3 blocks from their apartment, the one they went to every Tuesday. Jamie ordered a bacon cheeseburger and chocolate shake. Ryan ordered coffee and didn't touch it. "Seriously, Dad, what's wrong?" Jamie was looking at him with Emma's eyes, brown with flecks of gold, steady and worried. "Just a weird day at work," Ryan said. "Weird how?" "How did you tell your 9-year-old that his mother had been someone else entirely? That the woman they'd both loved had buried a whole life, a whole family, and never said a word?" "You didn't. Not yet." "Delivered to a mansion," Ryan said instead. "Big fancy place. Made me think about stuff." "Like what?" "Like how different people live. What makes them happy?" Jamie dragged a French fry through ketchup. "Mom used to say money doesn't make you happy. Just makes it easier to be miserable in comfort." Ryan's chest tightened. "She said that?" "Yeah, when I asked why we didn't have a pool like Tyler's house." Jamie grinned. "She said pools were just expensive holes you had to clean." Ryan laughed, despite everything. That sounded like Emma, practical, deflecting. Or maybe that was Catherine, running so hard from wealth that she'd convinced herself poverty was a virtue. "Dad?" Jamie's voice was tentative now. "Do you miss Mom?" "Every day." "Me too." Jamie looked down at his plate. "Sometimes I forget what her voice sounded like." "Is that bad?" "No, buddy, that's not bad." Ryan reached across the table and squeezed Jamie's hand. "That's just what happens. But we've got videos. We can watch them whenever you want." "Okay." Jamie brightened. "Can we watch the one where she's teaching me to ride my bike? That one's funny." "Yeah, we can do that tonight." They finished dinner. Ryan paid. They drove home to the small two-bedroom apartment that had been enough when Emma was alive and felt cavernous now. Ryan made Jamie do homework while he pretended to sort through mail. Then they watched the video. Emma running alongside a wobbling 5-year-old Jamie, laughing as he veered into the grass, cheering when he finally got it. Ryan studied her face on the screen, looked for signs of Catherine, found nothing. After Jamie went to bed, Ryan pulled out the box from the top of his closet. Emma's things, the things he couldn't bring himself to throw away. He went through them methodically, looking for anything that didn't fit. Her driver's license, issued in Oregon, 2009, Emma Christine Hale. But Oregon's records could be checked. He opened his laptop, started searching. 20 minutes later, he found it. Emma Hale had been born in Oregon in 1987 to parents who died in a car accident in 1992. She'd been in foster care until aging out at 18, except Catherine Arden had been born in Connecticut in 1987 to parents who were very much alive. Ryan kept digging. Social Security number, credit history, school records. Everything checked out. Emma Hale had existed, which meant Catherine Arden had either bought an identity or stolen one. Ryan's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered. "Mr. Hale?" A woman's voice, professional. "This is Victoria Arden. I hope it's not too late to call." "It's fine. I've been going through Catherine's files. There's something you should see. Could you come back tomorrow, around 10? I have work. I'll pay you for the day, please. It's important." Ryan closed his eyes. He should say no. Should protect Jamie from this. Protect himself. Should let the dead stay dead. "I'll be there," he said. Victoria was waiting for him in the study. The coffee table was covered with papers, photographs, folders. "I didn't sleep," she said by way of greeting. "I kept thinking about what you said, about how she could have had a whole life we didn't know about. So I went through everything, all the files from the investigation, all her old things we saved, and I found this." She handed him a photograph. Catherine, Emma, maybe 20 years old, standing in front of a building. She was smiling, genuinely smiling, and she looked so much like the woman Ryan had known that his throat closed up. "That was taken 3 months before she disappeared," Victoria said, "at the gallery where she worked. Nothing unusual about it, but look at what she's wearing." Ryan looked. Catherine was wearing a necklace. Small, silver pendant, delicate chain. Emma had worn the same necklace every day of their marriage. "I gave her that when she turned 20, Victoria said quietly. "It was our grandmother's. When she disappeared, I assumed she'd taken it with her, but seeing it in your photos, she kept it, the whole time." Ryan set down the photograph. "What else?" Victoria handed him a folder. "Bank statements, from Catherine's account. I subpoenaed them during the investigation, but I didn't look closely until last night. Look at the withdrawal dates." Ryan scanned the pages, small withdrawals, irregular amounts. 200 here, 500 there. Starting in 2009, the final 5,000 in March 2012. "She was building a cushion," Ryan said, "for 2 years. And look at this." Victoria pulled out another document. "Credit report I managed to pull for Emma Hale." Ryan took it. Emma's credit history started in 2009. 1 credit card, small limit, paid off regularly, a car loan in 2010. "She established the identity 2 years before she disappeared," Ryan said slowly, "which means whatever happened in March 2012 wasn't the catalyst. It was the deadline." "That's what I think too." Victoria sat back. "Catherine was planning to vanish. She spent years setting it up. Whatever she called me about, whatever terrible things she'd done, that just accelerated the timeline." Ryan's mind was racing. Did she have a boyfriend? Someone she might have been protecting? "Not that I knew of, but we weren't close then. She could have had a whole relationship I didn't know about." "What about work? Money problems? Legal trouble?" "The gallery job barely paid minimum wage. She was living in a shoebox apartment in Brooklyn. As far as I know, she didn't touch her trust fund after college." Victoria paused, which was another thing our father fought with her about. He wanted her to take an allowance. She refused. Ryan thought about Emma's work as a graphic designer, how she'd taken whatever jobs came along, never advertising, never building a client base. Like she was working just enough to justify existing, but not enough to be noticed. "What was Catherine studying in college?" he asked. Art history. She loved it, always talking about painters and movements and theory. Victoria smiled sadly. She wanted to be a curator, have her own gallery someday. Emma had never mentioned art. Not well once. She'd decorated their apartment with prints from Target and photos they'd taken themselves. She'd killed Catherine completely. There's one more thing, Victoria said. She picked up a thin folder from the bottom of the pile. This was in a safe deposit box Catherine rented 6 months before she disappeared. The bank finally released it to us after 5 years of legal battles. She handed it to Ryan. I never showed this to my parents. I wasn't sure I should. Ryan opened the folder. Inside was a single piece of paper, handwritten. If you're reading this, I'm either dead or gone. I'm sorry. For everything. Tell Mom and Dad I love them. Tell Victoria she was right about all of it. But I can't fix what I've done. I can only disappear. Maybe that's cowardice. Maybe it's survival. I don't know anymore. All I know is I can't be Catherine Arden anymore. She made too many mistakes, hurt too many people. This is the only way to make it stop. See, Ryan read it twice, 3 times. The words didn't change. What did she do? He asked. What mistake could possibly justify abandoning your entire family? I don't know. Victoria's voice was small. I've been asking myself that for 13 years. Ryan looked at the papers spread across the table. The evidence of 2 lives lived by one woman. Catherine the idealist, fighting against her family's money. Emma the ghost, hiding in plain sight. And somewhere between them, a secret so terrible she'd erased herself rather than face it. I need to find out, Ryan said. How? The gallery where Catherine worked, her roommate, her friends. Someone has to know something. Victoria was shaking her head. The police talked to everyone. The private detectives talked to everyone. If there was something to find, they weren't asking the right questions. Ryan stood. They were looking for what happened to Catherine Arden. I'm looking for who Emma Hale was running from. And you think that's different? I think Catherine left a note saying she hurt people. I think Emma spent 5 years looking over her shoulder. Yeah, I think that's different. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. I'm coming with you. No. She was my sister. And she was my wife. Ryan softened his voice. Victoria, I need to do this. I need to, I don't know, understand, make sense of it, and I can't do that with you there. Why not? Because looking at Victoria was like looking at a version of Emma that got to keep her family. Because every time Victoria talked about Catherine, Ryan felt the woman he'd loved slip further away. Because he was angry, so goddamn angry, and he didn't trust himself not to misdirect it. Because you'll want to defend her, he said instead. And I need the truth. Victoria's expression hardened. You think I don't? I think you want your sister back, even if it's just her memory. Ryan picked up his jacket. I just want answers. He left before Victoria could argue. The gallery was still there, a narrow space in Soho, wedged between a boutique and an overpriced coffee shop. Ryan stood across the street watching people browse. Modern art, mostly. Abstract pieces that probably cost more than his car. He crossed the street and went inside. The woman at the desk looked up, smiling professionally. Welcome. Let me know if you have any questions. Ryan pulled out his phone, showed her Emma's picture. I'm looking for someone who worked here in 2012. Catherine Arden. The smile faded. Are you a reporter? No, I was her husband. Sort of. The woman's expression shifted to confusion. I'm sorry? It's complicated. Did you know her? I've only been here 3 years. She gestured to the back. But Marcus might. He's been here since the place opened. Let me get him. Marcus was 50-ish, paint-stained jeans, expensive glasses. He looked at Emma's photo, and his face went still. You found her, he said. She died 3 years ago. Jesus. Marcus sat down heavily on a bench. How? Car accident. But that's not why I'm here. Ryan sat next to him. I need to know what happened before she disappeared, what she was involved in. Marcus looked wary. Are you police? No, just someone trying to understand his wife. She was your wife? Under a different name. Look, I know this sounds crazy, but I need to know. She left a note saying she'd hurt people, that she couldn't fix what she'd done. What did she do? Marcus was quiet for a long time. Then, she was involved with a guy, developer, rich bastard who wanted to tear down a community center to build luxury condos. Ryan's stomach dropped. Her father. What? Her father was a developer, real estate. No, this wasn't. Marcus stopped. Wait, Arden. Her last name was Arden. He swore. The developer was Arden Holdings, her father's company. She never said. She was so passionate about fighting it, organizing protests, getting media coverage. She even got one of our artists to do an installation on the site, this powerful piece about displacement and community. Marcus ran his hand through his hair. Then the building permit got approved anyway. The city council voted it through, and Catherine, she was devastated, kept saying she'd failed everyone. But that's not, Ryan struggled to understand. That's activism. That's not hurting people. No, but there was something else. Marcus lowered his voice. About a month before she disappeared, a guy came by looking for her. Big, official looking, said he was a lawyer. Catherine saw him and she went white, locked herself in the back room. When I finally convinced her to come out, she was packing her things, said she had to quit that day, wouldn't explain. Did you get the lawyer's name? No, but I remembered his face, and about a week later I saw him on the news. He was involved in some kind of scandal. Real estate fraud, I think. People got arrested. Ryan's heart was pounding. Do you remember when? What the scandal was called? March 2012, something about falsified permits and bribes to city officials. The Arden Holdings name came up. Marcus met Ryan's eyes. That's when I put it together. Catherine was part of that family, and something about that scandal made her run. Ryan pulled out his phone and started searching. March 2012. Arden Holdings. Fraud. The articles loaded. His screen filled with headlines. Arden Holdings executives indicted in bribery scandal. City officials arrested in real estate fraud case. Whistleblower evidence leads to corruption charges. Ryan clicked on the third article, started reading. The blood drained from his face. What? Marcus asked. What is it? Ryan couldn't speak. He just turned the phone around. The article detailed how an anonymous whistleblower had provided evidence to federal prosecutors. Documents proving that Arden Holdings had bribed city officials to approve development permits. Financial records? Email correspondence. Everything needed to build a case. The whistleblower's identity had been protected, but the article mentioned that the evidence included internal company documents, the kind only a family member would have access to. Catherine hadn't just fought against her father's company, she'd destroyed it. And in doing so, she'd destroyed any chance of going home. She was the whistleblower, Ryan said quietly. Marcus whistled low. That's why she ran. Ryan kept reading. 3 executives had been indicted, including Catherine's father, Henry Arden. The case had dragged on for months. In the end, Henry Arden had taken a plea deal, probation, massive fines, forced retirement from the company, but the damage was done. Arden Holdings had lost contracts, investors, reputation. The family name was mud, and Catherine had done it. Ryan thought about the note in the safe deposit box. Tell Victoria she was right about all of it. Victoria had said Catherine was righteously angry about the family business, that she'd fought with their father about ethics and environmental impact. She'd been right, and she'd done something about it, and it had cost her everything. I need to go, Ryan said. Marcus stood with him. If you talk to her family, tell them she was good. Tell them she tried to make things right. I will. Ryan walked out of the gallery into the cold November afternoon, his mind reeling. Emma hadn't been running from some random mistake. She'd been running from the consequences of bringing down her own father, from the guilt of destroying her family, from the knowledge that choosing justice meant losing everyone she loved. So she'd built a new life, a quiet life, a life where she didn't have money or power or any connection to the person she'd been. She'd built Emma, and she'd found Ryan, and they'd had Jamie, and for 5 years she'd been happy. Or at least she'd been free. Ryan got in his car and drove back to the Arden estate. Victoria answered the door before he could knock. Did you find something? She asked. Your sister was the whistleblower, Ryan said. The federal case against your father. That was Catherine. Victoria's face went slack. What? She provided the evidence, the documents, everything. Ryan stepped inside. That's what she did. That's what she couldn't fix. Victoria sank onto the bench where Ryan had sat yesterday. But that would mean she destroyed your father's company, got him indicted, probably cost your family millions. Ryan sat beside her, and then she disappeared because she knew she could never come back. Silence. Victoria's hands were shaking. I need to tell my parents, she said finally. Are you sure? They've spent 13 years thinking she was taken or dead. Is it really better to know she chose to leave? It's the truth. Sometimes the truth is worse than the uncertainty. Victoria looked at him. Is it? Would you rather not know? Ryan thought about it. Thought about Emma, about the lies she'd lived, about the night she'd held him and never once mentioned the life she'd abandoned. No, he said. I'd rather know. Then so would they. Victoria stood. I'm going to Connecticut tonight. You should come with me. Why? Because you knew her, the person she became. They deserve to hear about that. About Emma. Ryan wanted to say no. Wanted to go home, hug Jamie, pretend this whole nightmare wasn't real. But Victoria was right. Henry and Margaret Arden had lost their daughter. They deserved to know she'd been happy, even if it was under another name. Okay, Ryan said, but I need to arrange care for my son. Bring him. Ryan stared at her. What? Bring Jamie. Let them meet their grandson. Victoria's voice was gentle. Please. It won't bring Catherine back, but maybe it'll make the loss a little more bearable. Ryan pulled out his phone, texted his neighbor, the one who sometimes watched Jamie after school. Got a yes. Picked up Jamie. Drove to Connecticut with Victoria in the passenger seat, neither of them speaking. The Arden house in Connecticut was smaller than the mansion, but still impressive. Colonial style, perfect lawn, the kind of place that appeared in magazines about New England charm. Margaret Arden opened the door. She was 70, maybe, silver hair, kind eyes. Those eyes went wide when she saw Victoria. Sweetheart, what's wrong? Is it Henry? Dad's fine, but I need to talk to both of you. It's about Catherine. Margaret's hand flew to her mouth. You found her. In a way, Mom, this is Ryan Hale, and this is... Victoria looked at Jamie, who was clinging to Ryan's hand, confused and frightened. This is your grandson. Margaret stared, then her legs buckled. Ryan caught her, helped her to a chair in the entrance hall. I don't understand, Margaret whispered. Henry Arden appeared from deeper in the house. He was tall, white-haired, walked with a cane. Ryan recognized him from the news articles. The man looked older now, tired. What's going on? Henry asked. Victoria took a breath. Catherine didn't disappear because someone took her. She disappeared because she chose to. She changed her name, built a new life. And her voice cracked. She had a family. For the next hour, they sat in the Ardens' living room, and Ryan and Victoria told them everything. The portrait, the photographs, the timeline, the whistleblower revelation. Margaret cried silently. Henry didn't cry at all. He just sat very still, holding his wife's hand. When they finished, Henry spoke for the first time. She was right to leave. Everyone looked at him. Henry's voice was rough. I knew what we were doing wasn't entirely legal. I told myself it was how business worked, that everyone did it, but Catherine saw it clearly. She tried to tell me. I didn't listen. He looked at Ryan. She gave up her family because of my mistakes. And I can't forgive myself for that. Margaret squeezed his hand. It wasn't just your mistake. Yes, it was. Jamie, who'd been quiet this whole time, suddenly spoke. My mom wasn't Catherine. She was Emma, and she was nice. She made really good pancakes. And she always knew when I was sad, even if I didn't say anything. Everyone turned to look at him. She sounds wonderful, Margaret said softly. She was. Jamie looked at Ryan. Right, Dad? Yeah, buddy, she was. Margaret stood and crossed to Jamie. She knelt in front of him, tears streaming down her face. May I hug you? Jamie looked at Ryan, uncertain. Ryan nodded. Margaret pulled him into her arms and held on like he was the only solid thing in the world. "I'm so glad you exist," she whispered. They stayed for dinner. Margaret made pasta, too much of it, and kept finding excuses to touch Jamie, fixing his hair, straightening his collar, squeezing his shoulder. Henry was quieter, watching his grandson with something that looked like grief and wonder mixed together. Over dessert, Margaret asked about Emma, what she liked, what she did, how she and Ryan had met. Ryan found himself talking, sharing stories he hadn't told anyone since the funeral. How Emma had been terrible at cooking but kept trying anyway. How she'd sung off key in the shower. How she'd read to Jamie every night, doing different voices for each character. She loved him so much, Ryan said. Everything she did was for him, making sure he was happy, safe, loved. Like she was trying to give him what she'd given up, Victoria said quietly. Ryan hadn't thought of it that way. But it fit. Emma had grown up wealthy and abandoned it, so she'd made sure Jamie grew up rich in other ways, in attention, in affection, in the security of being utterly cherished. When it was time to leave, Margaret pressed a photo album into Ryan's hands. "Pictures of Catherine," she said, "from when she was small. I thought maybe Jamie would want to see his mother as a child." Ryan took the album. "Thank you." "Will you come back?" Margaret's voice was hopeful. "Will you bring Jamie? We've already lost so much. I can't bear to lose him too." Ryan looked at Jamie, who was yawning, exhausted by the emotional weight of the evening. "Yeah," Ryan said. "We'll come back." They drove home in silence. Victoria had stayed in Connecticut. She'd take the train back tomorrow. Jamie fell asleep in the back seat. Ryan carried him up to the apartment, tucked him into bed, and then sat in the living room with Margaret's photo album. He opened it slowly. The first picture was of a baby. Catherine, according to the caption. Tiny, red-faced, screaming. The second showed a toddler with auburn hair and a mischievous smile. Then a young girl in a ballet costume, a preteen at the beach. A teenager at her high school graduation, cap askew, laughing at something off camera. Ryan studied each photo, looking for Emma. Found her in the curve of the smile. The way Catherine's eyes crinkled when she was genuinely happy. The small scar above her eyebrow, visible in a photo from age 8 when she'd fallen off her bike. But the person in these photos was brighter, more present. Like Victoria had said, loud, vivid, impossible to ignore. What had happened to turn that girl into the quiet woman Ryan had known? Not just the scandal. That was the catalyst, but something deeper. Something that made Catherine believe the only way forward was to erase herself completely. Ryan closed the album. Tomorrow, he'd go back to work. Tell his supervisor he needed a leave of absence. Start digging deeper into Catherine's life before 2012, into the years she'd spent building Emma's identity. Tomorrow, he'd try to make sense of the impossible. But tonight, he just sat in the dark apartment, surrounded by the ghost of a woman who'd loved him enough to give up everything, and wondered if love built on a lie could ever really be called love at all, or if it was just another kind of disappearing act. Ryan went back to work 3 days later, but he might as well have stayed home. He drove the routes on autopilot, delivered packages without remembering the addresses, came home each night with Jamie's questions hanging in the air like smoke. "Why did we go see those people?" Jamie had asked the morning after Connecticut. "Their family," Ryan had said, which was true and also completely inadequate. "Mom's family?" "Yeah." Jamie had gone quiet then, processing. Ryan recognized the look. It was the same one Jamie got when working through a difficult math problem, turning it over and over until something clicked. Finally, "But Mom said she didn't have family." "I know." "So she lied?" The word hit harder than it should have. Ryan had set down his coffee mug, looked his son in the eye, and said, "It's complicated." That's what adults say when they don't want to explain. Smart kid, too smart. "You're right," Ryan had admitted. "I'm still figuring it out myself. When I understand it better, I'll explain. Deal?" Jamie had nodded, but Ryan could see the worry there. The same worry that had appeared after Emma died, when Jamie was 6 and suddenly fatherless, felt like a real possibility. Kids that age shouldn't have to worry about losing both parents, but life didn't care about shoulds. Now it was Friday afternoon, and Ryan was sitting in his van outside a strip mall, staring at his phone. Victoria had texted him that morning. "Found something else." Can you come by tomorrow? He'd replied, What is it? Her response, Rather show you in person. Ryan had learned that Victoria's version of something usually meant another piece of his life was about to get rearranged. Still, he'd agreed. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., same as before. His phone buzzed again, different number this time. He answered without checking. Is this Ryan Hale? A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Yeah, who's this? My name is Dr. Sarah Chen. I'm a psychiatrist in Boston. I'm calling because, this is going to sound strange, but I treated a patient several years ago who I believe may have been your wife. Ryan's grip on the phone tightened. How did you get my number? Victoria Arden gave it to me. She thought you'd want to know. Know what? A pause. That Catherine, Emma, was seeing me for therapy in early 2012, right before she disappeared. Ryan's heart started hammering. What did you talk about? I can't disclose that. Patient confidentiality doesn't end with death. Another pause. But I can tell you that she was struggling, deeply, and I think there are things you deserve to understand, even if I can't give you specifics. So why are you calling? Because she left something with me. A letter. She made me promise that if she ever disappeared, I'd hold on to it for 10 years. And if no one came looking by then, I should destroy it. Doctor. Chen's voice softened. But someone did come looking. Victoria called my office yesterday. Ryan couldn't breathe properly. What does the letter say? I don't know. It's sealed, addressed to someone called Ryan. A beat. I'm assuming that's you. The van suddenly felt too small. Ryan pushed open the door, stood in the parking lot, tried to get air into his lungs. Mr. Hale, are you there? Yeah, I'm here. I'm in Boston. If you want the letter, you'll need to come pick it up in person. I can't mail something like this. I'll be there Monday, Ryan said. First thing. He hung up. Stood there in the November cold, shaking. Emma had written him a letter. 12 years ago, before she'd even met him, she'd written a letter to someone named Ryan, which meant she'd known. Somehow, she'd known. Ryan called Victoria. She picked up on the first ring. The psychiatrist called you, she said. Not a question. You knew about this? I found her name in Catherine's old planner. Appointment scheduled for March 15th, 2012. 2 days before she disappeared. Victoria's voice was tight. I called the office on a hunch. The receptionist said Dr. Chen had been trying to find Catherine's family for years. Something about a letter. She wrote my name on it. 12 years before she knew me. I know. How is that possible? I don't know, Ryan, but I think... Victoria stopped. I think maybe the letter explains everything. Ryan drove home in a daze, made Jamie dinner, helped with homework, put him to bed. Then he sat at the kitchen table and Googled doctor. Sarah Chen until he found her practice information. Reputable psychiatrist, specializes in trauma and identity issues. Reviews mentioned she was compassionate but direct. Identity issues. The phrase stuck in Ryan's head. He opened his laptop and started searching for something else, something that had been nagging at him since the gallery visit. If Catherine had spent 2 years building Emma's identity, she'd had to have help. You didn't just create a whole person out of nothing. There were records, documents, history. Ryan pulled up the credit report Victoria had shown him. Emma Hale, born 1987, parents deceased 1992, foster care until 2005. He started checking facts. Birth certificate, filed in Oregon, 1987. He requested a copy through the state database. Cost him $40 and would take 2 weeks. Death certificates for the parents. John and Lisa Hale died in a car accident outside Portland, December 1992. He found the accident report. Real accident, real deaths. But here's what didn't make sense. The couple had died, but according to the foster care records Emma supposedly had, they'd left behind a 5-year-old daughter. Except the accident report mentioned no survivors, no child in the car, no relatives contacted. Ryan kept digging, found an obituary for John and Lisa Hale, survived by their parents and siblings. No mention of a daughter. So where had Emma come from? He searched foster care records, but those were sealed. Tried social services databases, hit walls, spent 3 hours going down rabbit holes until his eyes burned and his coffee had gone cold. Then he found it. A small article in the Portland Tribune dated August 2009. Local woman charged in identity fraud scheme. The article was brief. A woman named Rebecca Torres had been arrested for creating and selling false identities. She'd worked in the records department of a hospital, had access to birth certificates, had been selling them to undocumented immigrants for years. The investigation had uncovered dozens of fake identities, all built on real birth certificates of deceased children. Children who'd died before getting Social Security numbers, before leaving paper trails, before existing in any system that could contradict the new identity. The article mentioned that Torres had taken a plea deal, 3 years in prison in exchange for cooperation. Ryan looked up Torres's release date, November 2012. She'd served her time and disappeared from public records. But in 2009, she'd still been operating, still selling identities to anyone with enough money. Catherine Arden, daughter of a wealthy developer, would have had enough money. Ryan sat back. The pieces were fitting together now. Catherine had bought Emma's identity, had found a real birth certificate, real parents, a real tragedy, had taken the name of a child who'd never grown up and used it to become someone else. It was smart, thorough, almost impossible to trace. Almost. His phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. "Are you up?" Ryan glanced at the clock. Past midnight. He replied, "Yeah." She called immediately. "I couldn't sleep," she said without preamble. "I keep thinking about what you said, about Catherine planning this for years, and I went through more of her old things, found her journals from college. And? She was researching how to disappear, like seriously researching. Books about going off the grid, articles about identity theft. There's a whole notebook of notes about creating false paper trails." Victoria's voice was shaking. "Ryan, she was planning this since she was 20 years old, 6 years before she actually did it." 6 years. Ryan tried to imagine being 20 and already planning to erase yourself. What kind of life made that seem necessary? "Did the journals say why?" he asked. "No, but there's this recurring theme about feeling trapped, about how money is a prison." Victoria laughed bitterly. God, she sounded so young, so idealistic, writing about how our family's wealth was built on exploitation, how she could never be free while she was Catherine Arden. So she destroyed the family business and then destroyed herself. "Looks like it." Ryan rubbed his eyes. "I'm going to Boston on Monday to get the letter. I want to come with you." "Victoria, please, I need to know what she was thinking, what she was planning." A pause. "She was my sister, Ryan. I loved her too." The words hung there. Ryan wanted to argue, wanted to say this was his grief, his confusion, his right to understand. But Victoria had lost Catherine too, had spent 13 years not knowing. That had to count for something. "Okay," he said. "We'll go together." They hung up. Ryan sat in the dark kitchen, listening to the apartment settle around him. Pipes creaking, refrigerator humming, the absence of Emma so loud it drowned out everything else. He thought about the first time he'd told her he loved her. They'd been dating for 8 months. He'd said it casually, stupidly, while they were cooking dinner. She'd frozen, spatula in hand, and just stared at him. "You don't mean that," she'd said. "Yeah, I do. You don't know me well enough to mean that." "I know you enough." She'd set down the spatula. Her hands were shaking. "Ryan, I'm not who you think I am." "Who do you think you are?" "Someone good, someone whole, someone who deserves—" She'd stopped, shaken her head. "Never mind." He'd taken her hands. "Hey, look at me. I love you. Not some idea of you, the actual you, the woman who burns every dinner she tries to make, who cries at dog food commercials, who hums off-key in the shower. That's who I love." Emma had pulled away. "What if there are things about me you don't know, bad things?" "Everyone has bad things." "Not like this." "Then tell me." But she hadn't. She'd just shaken her head and said, "I can't." And like an idiot, Ryan had let it go. Had told himself everyone had secrets, had convinced himself that whatever Emma was hiding, it couldn't be that bad. Turned out it was worse than bad. It was an entire life. Ryan went to bed, but didn't sleep. Lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about the letter waiting in Boston. about what Emma could possibly have to say to him from 12 years before they met. Saturday morning arrived too bright and too early. Ryan made breakfast, got Jamie dressed, and drove to the Arden estate. Victoria was waiting outside, wearing jeans and a sweater instead of her usual elegant clothes. She looked tired. "Thanks for coming early," she said as she got in the van. "I wanted to show you before we have to leave for Boston." "Show me what?" "You'll see." She directed him to a storage facility 20 minutes away. They parked in front of a climate-controlled unit and Victoria punched in a code. The door rolled up to reveal boxes, dozens of them, all labeled in neat handwriting, "Catherine, personal effects." "I couldn't keep it all at the house," Victoria said. "My parents, it was too painful for them, so I rented this place. Kept everything, just in case." She walked to a box in the back. "I came here yesterday, looking for the journals I mentioned, and I found something else." She opened the box and pulled out a shoebox. Inside were letters, hundreds of them, bundled with rubber bands. "Love letters," Victoria said, "from someone named Daniel." Ryan took the box, flipped through the bundles. They were dated, earliest from 2008, latest from March 2012. "Who's Daniel?" he asked. "I have no idea. Catherine never mentioned anyone with that name." Victoria pulled out one of the letters. "But read them. They're intense." Ryan opened one at random, dated January 2010. "Catherine, I can't keep doing this, sneaking around, pretending we don't exist. I love you, and I want everyone to know it. But you won't even tell your family about me. Why? Are you ashamed? Are you scared? Talk to me, please. D." He opened another, March 2011. "You're pulling away again. I can feel it. Every time things get real, you disappear for days, won't return my calls. Act like we're strangers. I'm trying to be patient, but I'm running out of patience. If you don't want this, just tell me. Don't torture both of us." D. Ryan kept reading. The letters painted a picture of a relationship that was passionate and painful. Daniel clearly loved Catherine, and Catherine seemed to love him back, but only in fits and starts. She'd be present, then absent, close, then distant. The final letter was dated March 14th, 2012. 3 days before Catherine disappeared. "I know what you did. I know about the whistleblower evidence. It was you, wasn't it? You're the one who turned in your father, and now you're planning to run. I can see it in your eyes. You're already gone. But Catherine, please, don't do this. We can figure it out together. I'll come with you if you want. We'll go anywhere. Just don't leave me behind. I love you. That has to count for something. Meet me tomorrow. The usual place. Let me help you." D. Ryan looked at Victoria. Did they meet? "I don't know, but look at the date. March 14th. She called me on March 15th crying, saying she'd done something terrible. And she disappeared on March 17th. You think Daniel is connected? I think he knew she was planning to run. And I think maybe..." Victoria's voice caught. "Maybe she was planning to take him with her." Ryan thought about Emma, about how she'd been alone when they met. No boyfriend, no ex she ever mentioned, no romantic history at all. "So what happened?" he asked. "Did she leave him behind? Did he refuse to go?" "Or maybe she realized she couldn't take him," Victoria said quietly. "Maybe that's what she meant when she said she'd done something terrible. Not just the whistleblowing, leaving someone she loved." Ryan put the letters back in the box. "We need to find him. This Daniel. I've been trying. Searched her old phone records, emails, everything. No Daniel in any of her contacts." "What about the letters? Any return address?" Victoria shook her head. "Hand-delivered, looks like. No postmarks." Ryan pulled out his phone. "What about social media? Old college friends?" Catherine didn't have social media. She was paranoid about privacy. Of course she was. Ryan thought about Emma's complete absence from the internet. No Facebook, no Instagram, no digital footprint whatsoever. At the time, he'd found it refreshing. Now it just seemed like more evidence of how thoroughly she'd erased Catherine. They spent 2 hours going through the storage unit, found more journals, more notebooks, more pieces of Catherine's life, but nothing that pointed to Daniel's identity. Finally, Victoria closed the last box. Maybe Dr. Chen will know something. Maybe Catherine mentioned him in therapy. Maybe. They drove back to the estate in silence. Ryan dropped Victoria off, then went home to pack for Boston. He'd arranged for Jamie to stay with Margaret and Henry, an arrangement that had surprised him when Margaret suggested it, and surprised him more when Jamie had eagerly agreed. They have a pool, Jamie had said, and Grandma Margaret said she'd teach me to make her special chocolate chip cookies. Grandma Margaret. The title had appeared so naturally, like Jamie had been waiting for permission to have grandparents. Ryan had felt something twist in his chest, gratitude and grief mixed together. Now, Sunday afternoon, Ryan and Jamie pulled up to the Connecticut house. Margaret was waiting on the porch, and Jamie was out of the car before Ryan even had it in park. "Easy, buddy," Ryan called, but Jamie was already showing Margaret a drawing he'd made at school. Henry appeared in the doorway. He'd shaved, Ryan noticed. Looked a little less hollow than he had a week ago. "Ryan," Henry said, nodding. "Come in for a minute?" Ryan followed him to the study. Comfortable room, leather chairs, shelves full of books that looked actually read. Henry gestured to a chair and poured 2 glasses of whiskey without asking. "I want to apologize," Henry said, sitting across from him. "For what?" "For my daughter lying to you. For the position that put you in." Henry took a sip. "I've spent the last week thinking about what Catherine must have felt. The guilt. The shame. Knowing she'd destroyed her own family." "She did what she thought was right," Ryan said, though the words felt strange. He wasn't sure he believed them. Maybe. Or maybe she was young and idealistic and didn't think through the consequences. Henry's expression was complicated. "I was guilty, Ryan, of what she accused me of. The bribes, the fraud, all of it. I told myself it was just business, that everyone did it, but that didn't make it right. She still could have talked to you, given you a chance to fix it. Could she?" Henry met his eyes. "I didn't listen to her for years. Why would she think I'd start then?" Ryan didn't have an answer to that. "The thing is," Henry continued, "I think Catherine believed she had to choose family or principles, love or justice, and she chose to burn it all down rather than compromise." He finished his whiskey. "That kind of absolutism, it's brave, but it's also lonely." Ryan thought about Emma, about how she'd lived so quietly, so carefully, like she was afraid of taking up too much space. "Was she lonely?" Henry asked. "With you?" "No," Ryan said, and realized it was true. She seemed happy, lighter, like she'd found something she'd been looking for. "Good." Henry stood. "That's good. Then maybe it was worth it." Ryan wasn't sure what to say to that. He finished his drink, said goodbye to Jamie, who barely looked up from the puzzle he and Margaret were working on, and drove home. Monday morning, he picked up Victoria at 6 a.m. They made the drive to Boston in near silence, both lost in their own thoughts. Dr. Chen's office was in a brownstone in Back Bay. Tasteful, expensive, exactly what you'd expect from a psychiatrist who treated wealthy clients. The receptionist led them to Dr. Chen's office. She was 50-ish, Asian, with kind eyes and a direct manner. She shook their hands and gestured to chairs. "Thank you for coming," she said. "I know this must be difficult." "Can you tell us anything?" Victoria asked. "About what Catherine was dealing with?" "Only in general terms." Dr. Chen sat behind her desk. "She came to me in January 2012. She was struggling with anxiety, depression, and what I'd characterize as a crisis of identity. She felt trapped between who she was and who she wanted to be." "Did she mention a man named Daniel?" Ryan asked. Dr. Chen's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. "I can't confirm or deny specific details," which was as good as a yes. "But the letter might," Dr. Chen continued. She pulled an envelope from her desk drawer, thick paper, expensive. Ryan written on the front in handwriting Ryan recognized from grocery lists and birthday cards. His hands shook as he took it. "She gave me very specific instructions," Dr. Chen said. "If she disappeared, I was to hold this for 10 years. If her family found her within that time, I was to give them the letter. If not, I was to destroy it." She paused. "She seemed certain someone would come looking." "Did she say who?" Victoria asked. "No, but she seemed almost peaceful about it, like she'd made her decision and was ready to live with the consequences." Ryan stared at the envelope. His name, written by a woman who hadn't known him yet, who wouldn't know him for another year. Can I open it here? He asked. Of course. Ryan broke the seal. Inside were 3 pages, handwritten, dated March 15th, 2012. He started reading. Victoria leaned over to see, and they read together. Dear Ryan, I don't know who you are yet. I don't know when we'll meet, or where, or how. But I know you exist. I know that somewhere, in the future I'm building, there's someone I'll love enough to want to explain all of this to. I'm writing this the day after I told Daniel I can't run away with him. The day after I chose a life alone over a life with someone who knows the truth about me. He begged me to let him come. Said he didn't care about my family or the scandal or any of it. But I couldn't do that to him. I couldn't let him give up everything for a ghost, because that's what I'm going to be. Catherine is dying. I'm killing her. Tomorrow I disappear completely, and the person who emerges, Emma, she won't have a past, won't have family or friends or any connection to the life I'm leaving. She'll be free, but she'll also be alone, except I don't want to be alone forever. So I'm making you a promise, Ryan, whoever you are, whenever I meet you. I promise I'll love you the best way I know how. I'll be present. I'll be honest about who Emma is, even if I can't be honest about who Catherine was. And I'll really try, to give you a real life, a real partnership, real love. I know that's not fair. I know you deserve the whole truth, but I can't give you that without destroying everything I'm building. So instead, I'm leaving you this letter. If you're reading it, it means I'm gone. Dead, probably. And you found Victoria, or my parents, or somehow stumbled onto the truth about Catherine. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. For the lie, for the deception, for making you fall in love with half a person. But here's what I need you to know. Emma isn't fake. The woman you loved, she's real. She's who I became when I finally escaped Catherine. She's the person I would have been if I'd grown up without money, without pressure, without the weight of my family's sins. Emma is the truth of me, even if her history is a lie. And you, whoever you are, you saved me. By loving Emma, by giving me a reason to keep being her, you gave me something Catherine never had. You gave me peace. I don't know if we'll have children. I don't know if we'll have years together, or just months. But I know this. Every moment I spend with you will be worth the cost of everything I gave up. Thank you for loving me. Thank you for not knowing enough to ask the questions I couldn't answer. And thank you for, hopefully, understanding now. I love you. I loved you before I knew you, and I'll love you after I'm gone. Yours always, Catherine/Emma Ryan's vision blurred. He read it again, then again. The words didn't change. Victoria was crying openly now, not bothering to hide it. She knew, Victoria whispered. She knew she'd find someone. She planned for it, Ryan said. His voice sounded wrong. She planned to fall in love, to build a life, to have everything she'd given up, just under a different name. Is that... Victoria stopped. Is that manipulative, or is it just survival? Ryan didn't know. He folded the letter carefully, put it back in the envelope, looked at Dr. Chen. Did she ever mention me specifically? He asked. Did she ever say she'd met someone? I stopped seeing Catherine 3 days after she wrote that letter, Dr. Chen said gently. She called to cancel her standing appointment and never rescheduled. I never heard from her again. Ryan stood. The room felt too small. Thank you for keeping this, for... He couldn't finish. Dr. Chen stood too. Mr. Hale, if I may, Catherine was one of the most conflicted people I've ever treated, but she was also one of the most determined. When she decided to become Emma, it wasn't an act of cowardice. It was an act of incredible courage. She chose to live rather than be destroyed by her guilt. She chose to lie. She chose to survive, Dr. Chen corrected. There's a difference. Ryan and Victoria left the office, walked to the car in silence, sat in the parking lot, neither of them speaking. Finally, Victoria said, "What do we do now?" "I don't know." "Should we tell my parents about the letter?" Ryan thought about it. About Margaret's face when she'd hugged Jamie, about Henry's guilt, about the careful hope they'd both been building around the idea that Catherine had been happy. "No," he said. "Let them keep believing she found peace. They don't need to know she was planning it like a military operation." Victoria nodded. "What about you?" What are you going to do? Ryan looked at the envelope on the dashboard. 3 pages that explained everything and nothing. I'm going to go home, he said. I'm going to pick up my son. And I'm going to try to figure out how to keep loving a woman who doesn't exist anymore. She existed, Victoria said quietly. The woman you loved, she was real. Was she? Or was she just another identity Catherine bought? Victoria didn't answer. There was no good answer. They drove back to Connecticut in silence. Ryan picked up Jamie, who chattered the whole way home about the pool and the cookies and how Grandma Margaret had shown him photo albums of Mom when she was little. She looked different, Jamie said. Same but different, like Mom but also not Mom. Yeah, Ryan said. That's exactly what she was. That night, after Jamie was asleep, Ryan read the letter one more time. Tried to find anger in himself. Tried to feel betrayed, manipulated, used, but all he felt was tired and sad, and weirdly grateful that Emma had loved him enough to want to explain, even if the explanation came 12 years too late. He put the letter in the box with Emma's things, closed the lid, went to bed, and dreamed of a woman with 2 names and 2 lives and 1 heart that had never quite figured out how to be whole. The DNA test arrived on a Thursday. Ryan stared at the kit for 20 minutes before opening it, sitting at his kitchen table with cold coffee and the kind of headache that came from not sleeping right for weeks. Victoria had suggested it 2 days after Boston, called him at 7 in the morning, voice tight and formal, like she was making a business proposition instead of asking to prove her dead sister had actually been his wife. I need to know for certain, she'd said. Not just photographs and timelines. Scientific proof. You don't believe me? Ryan had asked, though he knew that wasn't it. I believe you, but my parents, they need something concrete. Something that proves Jamie is Catherine's son. That proves she was really alive all those years. So Ryan had agreed, because what else could he do? He'd taken Jamie to a clinic, let them swab the inside of his cheek, watched his son's confused face as the technician sealed the sample in a sterile tube. Why do they need my spit? Jamie had asked in the car. They're checking to make sure you're related to Margaret and Henry. But we already know I am. You showed them pictures of Mom. Pictures aren't enough sometimes. People need proof. Jamie had gone quiet, then said, Do you need proof? The question had gutted him. Ryan had pulled over, turned to look at his son, Emma's son, and said, No, buddy, I don't need proof. I know exactly who your mom was. Except that was a lie. He didn't know. He was learning piece by piece that he'd never known at all. Now the results were here, and Ryan's hands shook as he opened the envelope. The technical language blurred together until he found the relevant section. Probability of biological relationship, 99.97% Jamie was Catherine's son, which meant Emma had been Catherine, which meant everything Ryan had been telling himself, that maybe this was all some impossible coincidence, that maybe the universe had just doubled up on faces, was definitively, scientifically wrong. His phone rang. Victoria. Did you get them? She asked. Yeah. And? Positive, Jamie's her son. Silence on the other end. Then a sound that might have been crying, or might have been laughing, or might have been both. I'll tell my parents, Victoria said finally. They'll want to, I don't know, celebrate, grieve, both? Yeah. Ryan, I have to go, he said, and hung up before she could say whatever she was going to say. He couldn't handle her gratitude right now, her relief that science had confirmed what her heart already knew. He threw the report in a drawer and went to work. The next 3 weeks passed in a fog. Ryan delivered packages, picked up Jamie from school, made dinners neither of them ate properly. Margaret called every few days, always cheerful, always asking when they could visit again. Henry sent a formal email about wanting to set up a trust fund for Jamie's education. Victoria texted updates about things she'd found. More journals, old photographs, a box of Catherine's college art projects. Ryan responded to all of it mechanically. Sure, we can visit. That's generous, thank you. Interesting, thanks for sharing. He felt like he was underwater, watching his own life happen from a distance. Then, 3 weeks after the DNA results, Jamie's school called. He'd gotten into a fight. Could Ryan come pick him up? Ryan left work mid-route, drove to the school doing 70 in a 50 zone, found Jamie sitting outside the principal's office with a split lip and eyes red from crying. "What happened?" Ryan asked, kneeling in front of him. "Tyler said Mom was a liar," Jamie said. His voice was small and furious. "He said his mom told him that our whole family is liars and I shouldn't be allowed at school." Ryan's blood went cold. "What?" The principal, Mrs. Henderson, appeared in her doorway. "Mr. Hale, could we talk in my office?" Ryan followed her in. She closed the door and sat behind her desk with the expression of someone about to deliver bad news she'd been dreading. "I'm sure you're aware that there's been some talk," she said carefully. "What kind of talk?" "About your wife's background, about the Arden family." Mrs. Henderson folded her hands. "I want to be clear. This school doesn't tolerate bullying. Tyler's been suspended for 3 days, but I think you should know that several parents have expressed concerns." "Concerns about what?" "About whether Jamie's presence here is appropriate, given the circumstances." Ryan stared at her. "You're saying parents want my son expelled because his mother had a complicated past?" "No one said expelled, but there have been questions about whether this environment is healthy for Jamie, given the attention." "Attention from who? Gossiping parents?" Mrs. Henderson's expression tightened. "Mr. Hale, I'm trying to help you. The story about Catherine Arden, it made the local news last week. Someone leaked it. And now everyone knows your wife was the whistleblower who brought down Arden Holdings, that she lived under a false identity, that she disappeared from one life and built another." She paused. "People are curious. And when people are curious, they talk. And sometimes that talk affects their children." Ryan stood up. "My son didn't do anything wrong." "I know that, but—" "No." Ryan's voice was hard. "There's no but. Jamie is 9 years old. He lost his mother 3 years ago. And now he's finding out she had this whole other life she never told him about. He doesn't need kids calling him a liar on top of that." "I agree completely. That's why I suspended Tyler." "Good. Is that all?" Mrs. Henderson hesitated. "There's one more thing. A reporter came by yesterday, asking questions about Jamie, about you. I didn't tell him anything, but I thought you should know." Ryan felt something cold settle in his stomach. "What reporter?" "He said he was from the Portland Chronicle, doing a story about Catherine Arden's secret life." Ryan left the office, collected Jamie, and drove straight to Victoria's. She answered the door in workout clothes, surprised. "Did you talk to the press?" Ryan demanded. "What?" "No, why would I?" "Someone leaked the story. It's in the news. Reporters are showing up at Jamie's school." Victoria's face went pale. "Oh no, Ryan, I swear I didn't." "Then who did?" "I don't know. Maybe someone from the police investigation, or the private detective we hired, or—" She stopped. "Or Dr. Chen's office. I told the receptionist who I was. Maybe someone there put it together." Ryan wanted to break something. "They're calling Jamie a liar at school. Parents are questioning whether he should be there." "I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix it." Ryan turned to leave, then stopped. "I can't do this anymore. The calls, the updates, the constant reminders that my wife was someone else. I need space." "Ryan." "I mean it, Victoria. I need you to stop. For a while. Please." He left before she could respond. At home, Ryan made Jamie hot chocolate, and they sat on the couch together, not talking. Finally, Jamie said, "Is it true?" "What Tyler said?" "Which part?" "That Mom lied about everything." Ryan set down his mug. This was the conversation he'd been avoiding for weeks, the one he couldn't avoid anymore. "Your mom had a complicated life before she met me," he said carefully. "She came from a wealthy family. When she was young, she did something brave, but also really hard. She told the truth about something bad her family's company was doing, and because of that, she couldn't go back to that life anymore." "So she pretended to be someone else?" "She became someone else. She changed her name to Emma and built a new life. And that's when she met me." Would Jamie process this? "Did she pretend to love us?" "No." Ryan pulled Jamie close. "That was real. Everything about how she loved us, that was the most real thing about her. But she lied about her name, about where she came from, about having no family." "Yeah, she did." "Why?" Because sometimes people make choices that seem right at the time, but later those choices trap them. Your mom, Catherine, she made choices when she was young that meant she had to keep lying to protect herself. And us. Protect us from what? From people like Tyler's parents, Ryan thought. From reporters and gossip and the kind of judgment that followed scandals like bloodhounds on a scent. From people who wouldn't understand, he said instead. Jamie pulled away, looked at him with eyes that were too old for 9. Do you understand? I'm trying to. Are you mad at her? Ryan thought about that. Was he mad, or was he just tired? Sad, confused, all of it mixed together into something that didn't have a name. I'm mad she didn't trust me enough to tell the truth, he said finally. But I'm not mad she tried to build a good life for herself, for us. Tyler said we're going to be in the newspaper, that everyone's going to know. Maybe. Probably. I don't want to be in the newspaper. Me neither, buddy. They sat there in silence. Then Jamie said, Can we move? Somewhere no one knows? The question was so plaintive, so desperate, that Ryan felt his chest crack open. We'll figure it out, he said. I promise. That night, after Jamie was asleep, Ryan Googled himself. Found 3 articles about Catherine Arden's secret double life, found his name, Jamie's school, the address of their apartment, found speculation about why Emma had chosen him, whether she'd manipulated him, whether their entire relationship had been calculated. The comments were worse. Hundreds of strangers weighing in on his marriage, his life, his dead wife's choices. Some sympathetic, most not. She was a con artist. That poor man had no idea. Bet she married him for cover. What better disguise than a normal family? The kid's the real victim here. Imagine finding out your mom was basically a criminal. Ryan closed the laptop before he threw it through a window. His phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. I found Daniel. Ryan stared at the message. He should ignore it, should maintain the distance he'd asked for. But his fingers were already typing where? Seattle. He's a professor at UW, Environmental Studies. I called his office. He'll talk to us. Why would he do that? Because I told him Catherine had a son. Ryan closed his eyes. When? This weekend, if you can make it. I know you said you need space, but I think we should hear what he has to say. She was right. Daniel was the last piece. The person Catherine had loved enough to almost take with her. The person she'd left behind. Okay, Ryan typed, but just this. Then I'm done. Saturday morning, Ryan dropped Jamie at Margaret and Henry's, an arrangement that was becoming routine and didn't feel as strange anymore, and drove to the airport to meet Victoria. They'd booked the last 2 seats on an early flight to Seattle. Victoria looked as exhausted as Ryan felt. They didn't talk much during the flight, both lost in their own thoughts. At SeaTac, they rented a car and drove to the University of Washington campus. Daniel Brooks had an office in the Environmental Studies building, 3rd floor, corner room with a view of the quad. He was younger than Ryan expected, mid-40s maybe, with graying hair and the kind of face that looked like it smiled easily. Right now, though, he wasn't smiling. You must be Victoria, he said, shaking her hand. Then to Ryan, and you're the husband. Ryan. They sat in uncomfortable chairs across from Daniel's desk. He'd made coffee, which none of them touched. I'm not sure what you want me to tell you, Daniel said after a long silence. Everything, Victoria said. We found your letters. We know you and Catherine were together. We know she left you behind when she disappeared. Daniel laughed, but it sounded hollow. Left me behind, that's one way to put it. What's another way? Ryan asked. Daniel looked at him. She chose you over me, before she even knew you existed. The words hung in the air. Explain that, Victoria said. Daniel stood, walked to his window. Catherine and I met in 2008. I was doing my PhD. She was working at the gallery. We met at a protest, Save the Coastline thing, trying to block a development project. She was fierce, passionate, completely fearless. He smiled sadly. I fell in love with her immediately. Took her 6 months to feel the same way. The letters said you were together for 4 years, Ryan said. We were. On and off, mostly off. Daniel turned back to them. She was terrified of commitment. Every time things got serious, she'd pull away. Wouldn't return my calls for weeks. Then she'd show up at my apartment at 2 a.m. crying, and we'd start over. Did she tell you about her family? Victoria asked. Not at first. I knew she had money. You can't hide that completely, the way she dressed, the things she knew about. But she said her parents were dead. Said she was living off an inheritance. Daniel sat back down. Then in 2011, I found out the truth. Saw her father on the news, put it together. How'd she react? Ryan asked. She was furious. At me for digging, at herself for lying. We almost broke up over it. Daniel ran his hand through his hair. But I told her I didn't care, that I loved her regardless of where she came from. And for a while, things were good, really good. She talked about the future, about maybe moving somewhere together, starting over. What changed? Victoria asked. She became the whistleblower. Daniel's voice went flat. I didn't know at the time. She was cagey about it, secretive. Said she was working on something important but couldn't tell me what. Then suddenly, her father's company was all over the news. Fraud investigation, federal charges. And Catherine, she just shut down. Did you figure out it was her? Ryan asked. Not immediately, but yeah, eventually. The timeline fit, her behavior fit, and when I confronted her, she didn't deny it. Daniel's eyes were distant. She said she'd done what she had to do, that she couldn't live with the guilt of staying silent. But now she had to live with the guilt of destroying her family. Victoria's hands were clenched in her lap. When did she tell you she was leaving? March 14th, 2012. 3 days before she disappeared. Daniel's voice cracked slightly. She showed up at my apartment, said she was going away, that she couldn't take me with her, that it wouldn't be fair. And you believed her? Ryan asked. No, I begged her to let me help. Told her we could go anywhere, be anyone. I'd leave my PhD, my life, everything. I didn't care. Daniel laughed bitterly. But she said that was exactly why she couldn't take me. Because I'd be giving up too much. Because eventually I'd resent her for it. She wrote you a letter, Victoria said softly. We found it. You asked her to meet you, did she? Daniel shook his head. No, I waited at our usual coffee shop for 3 hours. She never showed, and the next day, she was gone. Ryan felt something twist in his chest. Catherine had left Daniel because she loved him, had refused to let him sacrifice his future for hers. Which meant when she met Ryan 2 years later, when she built a life with him, she'd already made peace with being alone. Or maybe she hadn't. Maybe that's why she'd written the letter to a future Ryan, because she knew she couldn't stay alone forever. Did you look for her? Victoria asked. For years. I filed a missing person report, talked to the police, hired my own investigator. Daniel met Victoria's eyes. I'm sorry I never contacted your family. I didn't know what to say, how to explain that I knew her as Catherine, but she'd made me promise never to tell anyone about us. Why the secrecy? Ryan asked. She said it was safer that way, that if things went wrong with the whistleblower case, anyone connected to her could be in danger. Daniel's expression darkened. I think she was just scared of commitment, of letting people in, of being known. That sounded like Emma. Ryan thought about all the times she'd deflected personal questions, changed the subject when he asked about her past, kept herself just slightly out of reach even in their most intimate moments. When did you stop looking? Victoria asked. 2015. I met someone else, got married, started a family. Daniel gestured to a photo on his desk, him with a woman and 2 young kids, all smiling. I had to move on, but I never forgot her, and I never stopped wondering what happened. She died in 2015, Ryan said. Car accident. She'd been living in Portland under the name Emma Hale. Daniel's face crumpled. Portland. Jesus, I must have driven through there a dozen times. She was that close. She had a son, Victoria added. Jamie. He's 9 now. Your nephew, technically. Daniel looked at Ryan. Was she happy? Ryan wanted to say yes, wanted to paint Emma's life as perfect, peaceful, exactly what Catherine had been looking for. But he couldn't. I thought she was, he said instead. But I'm realizing I didn't really know her well enough to say for sure. Did she ever mention me? Daniel asked. No. Daniel nodded slowly, like he'd expected that answer. She was good at cutting ties. at burning bridges so thoroughly there was no going back. He stood, walked to a filing cabinet, pulled out a folder. I kept everything. The police reports. The investigators' files. Photos? I'm not sure why. Maybe I thought someday she'd come back and want to see proof that someone cared. He handed the folder to Victoria. Take it. Maybe it'll help you understand her better than I ever could. They left campus as the afternoon sun was starting to fade. Victoria drove while Ryan went through Daniel's files. Most of it was redundant, things they'd already found through their own investigation. But there were photos Ryan hadn't seen before. Catherine and Daniel together, younger, laughing. Catherine at protests, fierce and alive. Catherine in quiet moments, unguarded, looking at Daniel like he was her anchor. She loved him, Ryan said. I know. So why did she leave him? Because she loved him. Victoria glanced at him. That's what you do when you love someone, right? Protect them, even from yourself. Ryan thought about Emma's last hours. The way she'd held his hand in the hospital bed. The way she'd made him promise to take care of Jamie. She'd been protecting them then, too. Making sure Ryan's last memory of her was love, not truth. Do you think she ever stopped loving him? Victoria asked. I don't know. Maybe she loved both of us. Just differently. Is that possible? I hope so. Otherwise, everything about our marriage was a lie. They caught a late flight back. Ryan retrieved Jamie from Connecticut, listened to him chatter about the day's activities, drove home through empty highways. Put Jamie to bed and sat in the living room with Daniel's folder spread across the coffee table. There was a photo near the bottom. Catherine and Daniel at the beach, her head on his shoulder, both of them looking at the camera with the kind of contentment Ryan had seen in his own photos with Emma. He pulled out his phone, scrolled to a similar picture. Emma and him at the same beach. Ocean shores, couple hours from Portland. Jamie must have been 4, running at the edge of the frame. Emma was laughing at something Ryan had said, head tilted back, genuinely happy. Ryan held the 2 photos side by side. Same woman, different men, same beach, years apart. Catherine had run from one love and built another. Had she been happy with either? Or had she just been running so hard from her past that she never had time to stand still? His phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. My parents want to do a memorial for Catherine, something formal, to say goodbye properly. Ryan stared at the message. A memorial for a woman who'd already had a funeral. A goodbye to someone who'd left years before she died. When? He typed. 2 weeks. Will you come? Ryan looked at the photos again. Catherine smiling at Daniel, Emma smiling at him. The same smile built on different foundations. Yeah, he replied. We'll be there. The memorial was held at a church in Connecticut, old stone building that had probably been there 100 years. Margaret had organized everything, flowers, music, program with Catherine's photo on the front. The photo was from college, before the scandal, before the whistleblowing. Catherine looked young and hopeful and nothing like the woman Ryan had known. About 50 people showed up, extended family, old friends, people who'd known Catherine before she became Emma. Ryan sat in the back with Jamie, feeling like an intruder at someone else's grief. Victoria spoke first, talked about Catherine's passion for justice, her fierce love for the people she cared about, her courage in standing up for what she believed even when it cost her everything. Henry spoke next. His voice broke twice, said he'd failed his daughter, that he should have listened, that he'd spent 13 years wishing he could take it back, and now he'd spend the rest of his life wishing he'd had the chance. Margaret didn't speak, just sat in the front pew, crying silently. Then Victoria turned to Ryan. Would you like to say something about Emma? Ryan stood before he could think better of it, walked to the front, looked at the 50 faces staring at him, and realized he had no idea what to say. I didn't know Catherine, he started. I knew Emma, and she was quiet, gentle. She burned every dinner she tried to make. She sang off-key in the shower. She read to our son every night, doing different voices for the characters. His voice caught. She loved us. I know that. Whatever else was complicated or hidden or difficult about her past, that part was simple. She loved us completely. He sat back down. Jamie squeezed his hand. After the memorial, there was a reception at the Arden house. Ryan tried to leave, but Margaret caught his arm. Thank you, she said. for giving her a happy ending. I don't think it was happy, Ryan said. She died at 36. But before that, you gave her years of peace, of normalcy, of love. Margaret's eyes were wet. That's more than I thought she'd ever have. Later, while Jamie played with some second cousins in the yard, Victoria found Ryan on the porch. Are you okay? She asked. No. Me neither. She sat beside him. Daniel came. Did you see him? Yeah, saw him leave early. He told me he couldn't stay, said it was too hard. Seeing her parents, hearing about the life she'd built without him. Victoria paused. He asked about Jamie. Wanted to know if he could meet him someday. What'd you say? That it wasn't my decision. Ryan watched Jamie laughing with kids he'd never met before today. Kids who shared Emma's DNA, Catherine's history. Kids who'd grown up knowing the truth while Jamie had grown up in a lie. I'm tired, Ryan said. I'm tired of finding new pieces of her, of learning things that change everything I thought I knew. I just want to... He stopped. I don't know what I want. To move on? Maybe. Or just to stop moving backwards. Victoria was quiet for a moment, then, I've been thinking about something Dr. Chen said, about how Catherine chose to survive, and I wonder if maybe that's what we need to do too. Stop trying to understand every choice she made, stop looking for closure, just accept that she was complicated and broken and doing her best. And if her best wasn't good enough, then we live with that, the way she lived with everything else. Ryan looked at her, really looked. Saw the exhaustion etched in her face, the grief that had aged her in the past 2 months. They were both wearing Catherine's choices like weights around their necks. I need to tell you something, Victoria said, about why I've been pushing so hard to understand all of this. Okay. When Catherine disappeared, I blamed myself. I kept thinking if I'd been a better sister, if I'd reached out more, if I'd listened when she tried to tell me about our father's business, maybe she wouldn't have felt so alone. Maybe she wouldn't have had to burn everything down. Victoria's hands were shaking. And then when I found out she'd been alive, that she'd had this whole other life, I felt betrayed. Like she'd chosen you and Jamie over me, over our family, like we weren't worth coming back for. Victoria, let me finish. I needed to know why she left, why she stayed gone, why she never reached out. Victoria wiped her eyes. And now I know. She couldn't come back, not without destroying the person she'd become, not without dragging you and Jamie into the scandal. She chose to protect you by staying dead to us. That doesn't make it right. No, but it makes it understandable. Victoria stood. I'm going to stop now. Stop digging. Stop searching. I'm going to let her rest. And I think you should too. Ryan wanted to argue, wanted to say there were still questions, still gaps, still things that didn't make sense. But Victoria was right. They could spend years chasing Catherine's ghost and never catch her, or they could let her go. Okay, he said. Okay? Yeah, I'm done too. They sat together on the porch, watching Jamie play, both of them silently saying goodbye to a woman who'd died twice. 3 months passed before Ryan realized he'd stopped flinching every time someone said Emma's name. It happened at Jamie's soccer game, late February, cold enough that Ryan's coffee had gone lukewarm in his hand. Another parent, Sarah, whose kid played defense, sat down next to him on the bleachers. How's Jamie doing? She asked. With everything? Ryan had braced himself for the question, for the careful tone people used when they were really asking about the scandal, about Catherine, about the reporters who'd finally stopped calling after Ryan threatened legal action. He's okay, Ryan said. Better than I expected. Emma would be proud of him. And Ryan didn't freeze, didn't feel that familiar twist in his chest, just nodded and said, yeah, she would. Sarah had smiled and turned back to the game, and Ryan had sat there realizing that somewhere in the last 90 days, grief had stopped being a knife and started being just weight. Still there, still heavy, but bearable. Jamie scored a goal and Ryan cheered, and for maybe 30 seconds, he didn't think about Catherine or Emma or the impossible knot of a woman who'd been both. After the game, they went to the diner. Their usual booth, usual orders. Jamie's face was flushed from running, grass stains on his knees, Happy in the way kids get when they've done something well. Coach says I might make starting lineup next season, Jamie said through a mouthful of burger. That's great, buddy. Will you still come to games, even if they're on Saturdays? Of course, why wouldn't I? Jamie shrugged, suddenly focused on his fries. Tyler's dad stopped coming to his games after his parents got divorced. Tyler says his dad doesn't have time anymore. Ryan set down his coffee. I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me, whether you like it or not. What about Margaret and Henry? Are they going to keep wanting to see me? The question landed harder than it should have. In the 3 months since the memorial, Jamie had been to Connecticut twice. Margaret called every Sunday without fail. Henry had set up that education fund, had it legally notarized. They were building something, a relationship, a connection, whatever you called it when grandparents tried to know a grandson they'd missed 9 years of. They love you, Ryan said. They're not going anywhere either. But what if they get tired? What if they realize I'm not really Catherine? I'm just me. Ryan slid out of his seat, moved to Jamie's side of the booth, pulled his son close. You are Catherine's son. That makes you exactly who they want you to be. And even if it didn't, Jamie, you're not responsible for making them happy. You're just supposed to be a kid. Jamie was quiet against Ryan's shoulder. Then, do you miss her? The real her? I miss the her I knew. Whether that was real or not, I'm still figuring that out. Do you think she loved us for real? Or was it part of the lie? Ryan had been asking himself the same question for months. He'd read and reread the letter from Dr. Chen's office, looking for the answer. Emma is the truth of me, even if her history is a lie. But what did that mean? Could you separate the person from the deception? Could love built on a foundation of lies ever be called real? I think she loved us the best way she knew how, Ryan said finally, and I think that counts for something. It wasn't a perfect answer, but it was honest, and Jamie seemed to accept it. That night, after Jamie was asleep, Ryan's phone rang. Victoria. He almost didn't answer. They'd talked maybe twice since the memorial, brief exchanges about logistics and Jamie's visits. The distance had been intentional on both sides, a mutual agreement to stop picking at wounds. But he answered. I'm at your door, Victoria said. Ryan looked through the peephole. She was standing in the hallway, phone to her ear, looking nervous. He opened the door. What are you doing here? Can I come in? He stepped aside. Victoria entered, looked around the small apartment like she was seeing it for the first time. In a way, she was. Last time she'd been here was right after they'd found each other, when everything had been urgent and raw and desperate. Coffee? Ryan offered. No, I'm not staying long. Victoria sat on the edge of the couch. I came to tell you something. About Catherine's estate. Ryan's stomach dropped. What about it? When she disappeared, her trust fund went into probation. After 7 years, she was declared legally dead. The money, about $2 million, was split between my parents and me. Victoria's hands were clasped tight. But now that we know she was actually alive until 2015, the estate lawyers say the distribution was premature. Technically, the money should have gone to her surviving spouse and child. Ryan sat down slowly. You're saying you and Jamie are entitled to Catherine's inheritance, all of it. The room felt too small. Ryan's mind was spinning, trying to process. $2 million. Emma had lived in a cramped apartment, clipped coupons, worked odd jobs that barely paid rent, and the whole time she'd had access to $2 million. She never touched it, Ryan said. No, she couldn't, without revealing who she was. The moment she accessed that money, she'd have been found. So she just left it. She chose you over it. Victoria's voice was soft. She chose the life she built over the life she inherited. That has to mean something. Ryan thought about Emma's careful budgets. The way she'd worried over Jamie's school supplies, over doctor visits, over the cost of new shoes. She could have ended all of that with a single phone call, could have given Jamie everything, private schools, college funds, a house instead of an apartment. But she'd chosen poverty, chosen struggle, because accessing the money would have meant becoming Catherine again. I don't want it, Ryan said. Victoria blinked. What? The money. I don't want it. Give it to charity. Set up a scholarship. I don't care. But I can't. His voice broke. I can't take money from a life she ran away from. That's not honoring her memory. That's betraying everything she chose. Ryan, think about Jamie. Think about his future. College, opportunities. Henry already set up an education fund. Jamie will be fine. This is different. This is Catherine's money, her legacy. It should go to her son. Ryan stood, walked to the window. Outside, Portland was doing its usual February thing, rain and gray and cold that seeped into your bones. Emma had loved this city, had chosen it specifically because it was 3,000 miles from Connecticut, because no one here knew the Arden name, because she could disappear into its wet anonymity. Give it to people who need it, Ryan said. Environmental groups, the kind of causes Catherine cared about. Do something she would have wanted. Victoria was quiet for a long time. Then, "You're a better person than I am." "No, I'm just tired of her money complicating things." "It's not just money, Ryan. It's proof that she existed, that Catherine existed. My parents, they need that. They need to feel like some part of her is still here, still making a difference." Ryan turned around. "Then set up a foundation, in her name. Let them run it. Pour all that grief and guilt into something productive, but leave me and Jamie out of it." Victoria nodded slowly. "Okay, I'll talk to the lawyers, see what we can do." She stood to leave, then stopped. "There's something else. I wasn't going to tell you, but I think you should know." "What now?" "I found her journals, the ones she kept while she was Emma, before she met you." Ryan's chest tightened. "Where?" "Storage unit in Portland, rented under Emma Hale. I've been paying for it automatically for 3 years without realizing. It was in the estate paperwork, just another recurring charge. I went there yesterday." Victoria pulled a notebook from her bag. "She wrote about you, before she knew you, about the kind of person she wanted to meet." Ryan took the notebook like it might explode. The cover was plain, drugstore quality. Inside, Emma's handwriting, smaller than Catherine's, more careful. He flipped to a random page. January 2010, 3 months before they'd met. "I'm tired of being alone. I know that was the point. Erase Catherine, erase connections, exist in a vacuum where no one can find you. But 3 years of this, and I'm starting to forget why isolation felt like freedom. Maybe I was wrong. Maybe you can't run from yourself. You just end up lonely in a different city. I think about what it would be like to meet someone kind, someone who doesn't need me to be impressive or accomplished or connected to the right people. Someone who'd love Emma, just Emma, without knowing Catherine ever existed. Is that possible? Can you build something real on a foundation of lies? I don't know, but I think I want to try." Ryan closed the notebook. His hands were shaking. "There are 2 years of entries," Victoria said quietly. "All of them like that. Lonely, hopeful, scared. And then in October 2010, the entries change. She met someone at a coffee shop, someone who smiled at her like she mattered. Me. You. And Ryan, reading those entries, there's no question. She didn't plan to fall in love with you. She didn't manipulate you. She was just a lonely woman who met a kind man and took a chance." Ryan wanted to read more, wanted to devour every page, wanted to know what Emma had thought in those early days of their relationship. But he was also terrified of what he'd find, terrified that even her private thoughts might be calculated, constructed, part of the elaborate performance. "I'll leave it with you," Victoria said. "Read it or don't. That's your choice. But I thought you deserved to know that she struggled with lying to you, that it wasn't easy for her." After Victoria left, Ryan sat with the notebook in his lap for an hour. Not reading it, just holding it. Physical proof that Emma had been real, that her thoughts and fears and hopes had existed outside the narrative Catherine had constructed. Finally, he opened it again. Read chronologically this time, starting from the first entry. June 2009, 3 months after Catherine disappeared. "I'm in Portland now. New name, new life, new everything. Rebecca did good work. The paperwork is flawless. Emma Hale exists in every database that matters. Born 1987, orphaned 1992, foster care until 2005. It's a sad story, but sad stories are invisible. No one questions them. I miss Daniel. I miss my sister. I miss my mother's voice and my father's stupid jokes before everything went wrong. But I made my choice. I destroyed my family's company because it was the right thing to do. And now I have to live with that choice in exile. Catherine Arden is dead. Long live Emma Hale. September 2009. Got a job doing graphic design for a local nonprofit. The pay is terrible, but it's something. I'm trying to build a resume, a work history, proof that Emma is a real person with a real life. It's exhausting. Every conversation is a minefield. Every question about my past requires a lie. I'm getting good at it, too good. Sometimes I catch myself believing the lies, believing my parents really did die in a car crash, that I really did grow up in foster care. The mind is good at protecting itself, I guess. Create a story, repeat it enough, and it becomes true. December 2009. Christmas alone. I didn't expect it to hurt this much. Catherine's Christmases were loud. Big family dinners, too many presents, my mother going overboard with decorations. Emma's Christmas is a frozen dinner and cable TV. Is this freedom? Because it feels like punishment. The entries continued. Months of loneliness, of Emma building a life one careful lie at a time. She got better at it. Made a few surface-level friends, joined a book club, volunteered at an animal shelter, created the appearance of normalcy while remaining fundamentally alone. Then October 2010. Met someone today, coffee shop. He's the barista, Ryan, his name tag said, kind eyes, easy smile. He made a joke about my usual order, black coffee, blueberry muffin, every Tuesday and Thursday like clockwork, and I laughed. Actually, laughed. First time in months. I should stop going there. Should find a different coffee shop. Getting close to people is dangerous. But I'm so tired of being careful. November 2010. Ryan asked me out, like, officially. Stumbled over the words, adorably nervous. I said yes before I could think better of it. This is a terrible idea. I know it's a terrible idea, but I'm going anyway because maybe, just maybe, I deserve something good, even if it's built on a lie. Ryan's eyes burned. He remembered that first date. Thai restaurant, too nervous to eat, talking until they closed the place down. Emma had been quiet but present, laughing at his stupid jokes, asking questions about his life, his family, his dreams. He thought she was shy. Turned out she was just being careful. December 2010. I'm falling for him. I know I shouldn't. I know this can only end badly. But Ryan he's good. Genuinely good. Not because he's trying to impress anyone. Not because he wants something. He's just kind by default. He doesn't ask many questions about my past. I think he assumes I'm like him. Someone who's had some hard times and doesn't want to dwell on them. He told me about losing his mother last year. The grief in his voice was raw, real. I wanted to tell him the truth. That I understand loss. That I've lost people too, even though they're still alive. But I didn't. I just held his hand and let him think I understood in the general way, not the specific way. Is that love? Holding someone while lying to them? I don't know, but it feels like love. Ryan set the notebook down, stood up, walked to the kitchen and back, trying to process. Emma had known. She'd known from the beginning that their relationship was built on deception, had struggled with it, had almost walked away multiple times. But she hadn't. She'd stayed, chosen him over safety, over isolation, over the careful walls she'd built. He picked up the notebook again, kept reading. June 2011. Ryan proposed. Asked me in our apartment, no ring because he said he wanted me to pick it out, just got down on one knee and said he wanted to spend his life with me. I said yes. And then I went to the bathroom and cried until I threw up because I'm the worst person alive. He wants to marry Emma. But Emma isn't real. She's a construct. A costume I put on to hide from Catherine. But when I'm with Ryan, when he looks at me like I'm the best thing that ever happened to him, Emma feels real. More real than Catherine ever was. Maybe that's enough. Maybe I can be Emma for the rest of my life. And that can be my truth. I hope so. Because I love him. And I love the version of myself I am when I'm with him. August 2011. We got married today. Small ceremony. Just a few of Ryan's friends and coworkers. He tried to invite more people on my side, but I said I didn't have anyone. That my friends had drifted away over the years. He looked sad for me, squeezed my hand and said I had him now, and his friends would be our friends. I'm a liar and a fraud, and I don't deserve him. But I'm keeping him anyway. Ryan's vision blurred. He remembered their wedding, City Hall ceremony, nothing fancy, just the two of them and some witnesses. Emma had worn a simple white dress, nothing expensive, and she'd cried through the vows. He'd thought it was joy. Now he wondered if it had been guilt. April 2012. I'm pregnant. I don't know how to feel. Terrified, excited, guilty. All of it at once. This child will be Catherine's grandchild. Will carry her DNA, her blood, her family history. But he'll grow up thinking he's just Emma's son. He'll never know about the Ardens, about the money, about the life his mother abandoned. Is that fair? Is it fair to give him this half-truth existence? But what's the alternative? Go back? Reveal everything? Destroy the life I've built? I can't. I won't. This child is mine and Ryan's, not Catherine's. Catherine is dead. Emma is real. And Emma's baby will be real. And that's the end of it. Ryan felt something crack open in his chest. Jamie. Emma had been pregnant with Jamie when she wrote this, had been wrestling with the same questions Ryan was wrestling with now. What's real? What's performance? Where does the lie end and the truth begin? The notebook continued through the pregnancy, through Jamie's birth, through those early exhausting months of parenthood. Emma's entries became shorter, more sporadic, but consistent in one thing: love. She loved Ryan. She loved Jamie. She loved the life she'd built, even as she hated herself for the lies that built it. The final entry was dated September 2015, a week before she died. Jamie started 3rd grade today. He's getting so big, so smart, so much like Ryan, kind, thoughtful, observant. Sometimes he looks at me with those careful eyes, and I wonder if he knows. If somehow, on some level, he can sense that I'm not entirely real. But then he hugs me and calls me mom, and everything else falls away. I've been thinking about the letter I left with Dr. Chen, the one addressed to Ryan. I wrote it 4 years ago when I still thought I might go back someday, when I thought eventually I'd have to tell the truth. But I don't think I will. I think I'll take Catherine to my grave and let Emma be the only story anyone knows. It's better that way, cleaner, less painful. Ryan deserves better than half-truths and confessions and explanations that don't explain anything. He deserves the simple story. We met, we fell in love, we built a life. So that's what I'll give him, for as long as I can. I love you, Ryan. If you ever read this, if you ever find out the truth, please know that. I loved you more than I loved my own truth. And I'd make the same choice 1,000 times over. The entry ended there. Ryan closed the notebook and sat in silence. Emma hadn't planned to tell him, had chosen to take Catherine's secret to her grave. The only reason Ryan knew any of this was because of a freak accident, delivering a package to the one house in the world with Catherine's portrait hanging on the wall. If he'd been assigned a different route that day, he never would have known, would have lived the rest of his life believing Emma's story, would have died thinking his wife had been exactly who she said she was. Would that have been better? Ryan didn't know. Couldn't know. The question was impossible. His phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. Did you read it? Yeah, he typed back. And? Ryan stared at the question. What was the answer? That Emma had loved him? That Catherine had been desperate to escape? That the whole thing was tragic and beautiful and unbearably sad? She did her best, he wrote finally. That's all anyone can do. Victoria didn't respond. Ryan turned off his phone, put the notebook in the box with Emma's other things, and went to bed. The next morning, Jamie came into his room early, bouncing with energy. Can we go see Margaret and Henry this weekend? He asked. We were just there 2 weeks ago. I know, but Margaret said she'd teach me how to make bread, and Henry said he'd show me old photos of Mom when she was my age. Jamie paused. Is that weird? Looking at photos of her as a kid? No, buddy. I think she'd want you to know where you came from. Even if it's complicated? Especially if it's complicated. They drove to Connecticut that Saturday. Margaret had indeed made bread, and the house smelled like yeast and warmth. Henry had set up a projector in the living room, had digitized old family videos. They spent the afternoon watching Catherine grow up on screen, birthdays, holidays, school plays, family vacations. Jamie sat transfixed, watching his mother live a life he'd never known about. Ryan watched too, trying to reconcile the loud, vivid girl on screen with the quiet woman he'd married. At one point, a video showed Catherine at maybe 16 arguing passionately with her father about something. She She was gesturing wildly, voice raised, completely unafraid. Henry watched with tears in his eyes. She was never scared to fight, he said quietly, even when she was little. If she thought something was wrong, she'd say it, loudly. Ryan thought about Emma, who'd avoided conflict like it was poison, who'd agreed with him even when she probably shouldn't have, who'd smoothed over disagreements before they could escalate. Catherine had fought. Emma had fled. Different responses to the same broken world. That night, after Jamie was asleep in the guest room, Ryan found himself on the back porch with Victoria. She'd driven up for dinner, had sat through the videos with an expression Ryan couldn't read. "This is weird, right?" she said. "All of us pretending we're a normal family." "Yeah, but it's also kind of nice." "Do you think Catherine would hate this, us getting close because of her death?" Ryan considered. "I think she'd be relieved that Jamie has family, that we all found each other. Even though it means her lie got exposed? Maybe especially because of that." Ryan looked at Victoria. She carried that secret alone for years. Must have been exhausting. At least now we all know. We can share the weight. Victoria smiled sadly. "You're too understanding. You should be furious with her." "I was, for months. But anger doesn't bring her back, doesn't change what happened. It just makes me tired." "So what now? We just move forward?" "What else is there?" They sat in silence, watching the Connecticut night settle around them. Inside, through the window, they could see Margaret showing Henry something on her phone, both of them smiling. "They seem lighter," Victoria said, "since we found out the truth, like they can finally breathe. Knowing is better than wondering." "Is it?" Victoria turned to him. "You know everything now, every secret, every lie, every choice she made. Does that make it better or worse?" Ryan thought about the letter, about the journals, about all the pieces of Catherine and Emma he'd collected like evidence at a crime scene. "Both," he said finally. "It makes it both." Later, driving home with Jamie asleep in the back seat, Ryan's phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, but something made him pick up. "Mr. Hale?" A man's voice, unfamiliar. "This is Marcus from the gallery. We spoke a few months ago? About Catherine?" Ryan's grip on the wheel tightened. "I remember. I'm sorry to call out of the blue, but something happened. Someone came by asking about her. A woman. She said she was Catherine's roommate from Boston, before she disappeared." Ryan pulled over. "What did you tell her?" "Nothing. I didn't know what you'd want me to say. But she left her number. Said if anyone from Catherine's family wanted to talk, she had things to share. Things about what Catherine was dealing with before she left." "What kind of things?" "She didn't say. Just that Catherine had been scared, and that maybe understanding why she ran would help her family find peace." Marcus paused. "I know you said you were done digging, but I thought you should know." Ryan sat in the dark car, engine idling, Jamie sleeping peacefully behind him. He could ignore this, could let it go, could finally actually move forward like he'd told Victoria. Or he could make one more call, learn one more piece, close one more gap. "Give me her number," Ryan said. He drove home, put Jamie to bed, and stared at the phone number Marcus had texted him. Debated with himself for an hour. Finally, at 11 p.m., he called. A woman answered on the third ring. "Hello? This is Ryan Hale. Marcus from the gallery gave me your number. You knew Catherine Arden?" "Oh, thank God. Yes, I'm Simone. I was her roommate in Boston, 2011 to 2012. The woman sounded nervous. "I've been trying to find her family for years. There's something Catherine left with me. She made me promise not to tell anyone unless something happened to her." Ryan's chest went cold. "What is it?" "Not over the phone. Can you meet me? I'm in Portland. I moved here a few years ago, actually, kind of hoping I'd run into her someday, but..." Simone's voice caught. "Marcus told me she died. I'm so sorry." "What did she leave with you?" "Evidence of what she was running from." Ryan closed his eyes. "I thought she was running from what she'd done, the whistleblowing." "No," Simone said. "That's what she wanted everyone to think. But there was something else, something worse." Ryan met Simone at a coffee shop in Southeast Portland, the kind of place with mismatched furniture and local art on the walls. She was early 40s, dark hair streaked with gray, tired eyes that suggested she hadn't been sleeping well either. "Thank you for meeting me," she said as Ryan sat down. "I wasn't sure you would. You said there was something worse than the whistleblowing. I need to know what that means." Simone pulled a folder from her bag, old, worn at the edges, the kind that had been carried around for years. She set it on the table between them but didn't open it yet. "Catherine and I shared an apartment in Boston from 2011 to when she disappeared. We weren't close at first, just two people splitting rent. But over time, she opened up, told me about her family, the company, how much she hated what they did." Simone's fingers drummed on the folder. She was gathering evidence, documents from her father's office, emails, financial records, building a case to turn over to federal prosecutors. "I know all this," Ryan said, "but what you don't know is why she was so desperate to do it." Simone opened the folder. Inside were photocopies of documents, photographs, printouts of emails. In December 2011, Catherine discovered something, a development project her father's company was planning, low-income neighborhood in Roxbury. They were going to buy the buildings, evict everyone, tear it down, build luxury condos. That's terrible, but it's not illegal. It wasn't, until Catherine found out they were bribing city councilors to approve variances, paying off building inspectors to overlook code violations in the existing structures, and falsifying environmental reports to hide contamination on the site. Simone pulled out a photograph. "This is where it gets worse. The contamination wasn't accidental. Arden Holdings had dumped industrial waste on that site in the 80s. They knew about it, covered it up, and now they were going to build homes on poisoned land without disclosing it to buyers." Ryan looked at the documents. Chemical analysis reports showing lead, arsenic, other toxins in the soil, emails discussing how to bury the findings, plans to seal the contamination under concrete rather than remediate it properly. "People would have gotten sick," Simone said. "Children would have grown up playing on contaminated ground, and Catherine's father knew. He signed off on every decision." Ryan felt sick. So she turned him in. She tried to do it quietly first, went to him in January 2012, begged him to abandon the project, to clean up the site properly, to do the right thing. Simone's voice was bitter. He told her she was being naive, that the contamination was minimal, that the concrete would be fine, that she needed to stop interfering in business she didn't understand. She didn't stop. No, she went to the EPA instead, anonymously, gave them everything. They launched an investigation. Within a week, federal prosecutors got involved. Criminal charges were filed. Simone pulled out a newspaper clipping. But here's the part Catherine couldn't live with. When the story broke, her father blamed it on a disgruntled employee, guy named Thomas Reed, who'd worked in their environmental compliance department. Reed got fired, arrested, his life destroyed. Meanwhile, Henry Arden played the victim. Said his company had been betrayed by someone they trusted. Ryan stared at the clipping. The photo showed a middle-aged man being led away in handcuffs. "Thomas Reed didn't do it," Simone said. "Catherine did. But she was too scared to come forward. Scared of her father, scared of what admitting the truth would mean. So she let an innocent man take the fall." Jesus. It gets worse. Reed had a family, wife, 2 kids. He couldn't find work after the charges, lost his house. His wife left him. And in August 2012, 6 months after Catherine disappeared, he killed himself. Ryan's hands went numb. The folder swam in front of him. "Catherine didn't know," Simone said quickly. "She was already gone by then. Already Emma. But I knew. I was still in Boston. I saw the news about Reed's death, and I had all of Catherine's evidence, everything she'd left with me before she vanished. She made me promise not to tell anyone unless something happened to her." Simone's eyes were wet. "I've been carrying this for 13 years, the knowledge that an innocent man died because Catherine was too scared to tell the truth." Ryan couldn't breathe properly. Emma had done that. Had let someone else be destroyed to protect herself. Had built her new life on the grave of a man whose only crime was working for the wrong company. "Why are you telling me this now?" Ryan asked. "Because Marcus told me Catherine had a son, and I think you deserve to know who his mother really was before you decide how to remember her." Simone pushed the folder across the table. "I also think maybe it's time for the truth to come out, to clear Thomas Reed's name. His kids deserve that much." Ryan picked up the folder. Inside was everything: the evidence Catherine had gathered, her notes documenting conversations with her father, proof that she'd been the whistleblower, not Reed, proof that an innocent man had died for her choices. "What do you want me to do with this?" Ryan asked. "Whatever you think is right. It's not my secret anymore. It's yours." Simone left. Ryan sat in the coffee shop until it closed, reading through every document, every email, every piece of evidence, building a picture of Catherine he'd never wanted to see. Not the idealistic crusader Victoria had described, not the passionate activist Daniel had loved, a woman who'd done the right thing for the wrong reasons and then run rather than face the consequences. He drove home in a daze, put the folder in the box with everything else, sat at his kitchen table trying to figure out what to do. The easy answer was nothing. Bury it with Emma. Let Thomas Reed's family keep thinking he was guilty. Protect Catherine's memory. Protect Jamie from knowing his mother had caused an innocent man's death. But the weight of it sat on Ryan's chest like concrete. He called Victoria at 2 a.m. "This better be important," she answered, voice thick with sleep. "I found out what Catherine was really running from." Silence. Then, "I'll be there in an hour." She arrived in 45 minutes, still in pajamas under her coat. Ryan made coffee, neither of them drank, and showed her the folder. Watched her face go pale as she read. "Oh, Catherine," Victoria whispered. "What did you do?" "She let someone else take the fall, and he died because of it." Victoria set down the papers with shaking hands. "My father, he knew. He had to have known it wasn't Reed. He probably suspected, but it was convenient. A scapegoat meant Henry could play victim instead of villain. We have to tell people. We have to clear Reed's name." Ryan had expected Victoria to want to bury it, to protect the family, to choose Catherine over truth. The fact that she didn't, that her first instinct was justice, said something about who she was. Or maybe it said something about how tired they all were of protecting lies. "If we do this," Ryan said, "it destroys whatever reputation Catherine has left. Everyone will know she wasn't just a whistleblower. She was a coward who let an innocent man die." "I know. Your parents will survive. They've survived worse." Victoria met his eyes. "Thomas Reed's children deserve to know their father was innocent. That matters more than protecting my sister's memory." They sat in silence. Finally, Ryan said, "We need to talk to Reed's family first, before we go to the press. Give them the choice." Victoria nodded. "I'll find them." It took 3 days. Thomas Reed's widow, Patricia, lived in Maine now. Remarried, different last name, trying to build a life separate from the tragedy. But she agreed to meet them. Ryan and Victoria drove up on a Saturday, leaving Jamie with Margaret and Henry. Neither of them had told the Ardens what they'd found. Ryan wasn't sure how to. Patricia Reed lived in a small house outside Portland, Maine. She was late 50s, gray hair, cautious eyes. She invited them in but didn't offer coffee. "I don't understand why you're here," she said. "What does the Arden family want with me now?" Victoria pulled out the folder. "We have evidence that your husband wasn't the whistleblower, that he was innocent, that someone else, my sister, turned over the evidence that led to the investigation." Patricia's face went very still. "Your sister?" "Catherine Arden. She disappeared in March 2012. But before she did, she left proof with a friend. Proof that she was the one who contacted the EPA, not Thomas." Patricia took the folder with shaking hands, read through it slowly, methodically. When she finished, she looked up with eyes full of rage. "Your sister destroyed my life. She let my husband go to prison, lose his job, lose everything. And then she ran away rather than tell the truth." "I know," Victoria said quietly. "And I'm sorry. I can't undo what she did, but I can help clear Thomas's name if you want." "If I want?" Patricia's laugh was harsh. "My children grew up thinking their father was a criminal. My daughter wouldn't speak to him for a year before he died. My sons still won't talk about him. They need to know he was innocent." "Then we'll make sure they know," Ryan said. "We'll go to the press. Release everything. Your husband's name will be cleared." Patricia looked at him. "You're the one who married her. Under a different name." "Yes." "Did you know what kind of person she was?" Ryan thought about Emma. About the gentlewoman who'd read bedtime stories and burned every dinner and loved Jamie with a fierceness that had seemed to come from somewhere deep and desperate. "No," he said. "I didn't know. And I'm not sure I do now." Patricia stood. "Tell the truth, all of it. Let people know what your sister did, what your family did. And maybe Thomas's kids can finally have some peace." They released the documents to the Boston Globe the following week. The story broke like a bomb. Arden Holdings had already been damaged by the original scandal, but this destroyed what was left. Henry and Margaret's names were dragged through the press again. Victoria's business took a hit, and Catherine, Emma, became not a tragic figure or a brave whistleblower, but a coward who'd let an innocent man die. The backlash was immediate and brutal. Ryan got calls from reporters, from strangers, from people who thought he should have kept quiet. Jamie's school requested he be withdrawn for the remainder of the year. Too disruptive, they said, though what they meant was too controversial. Margaret called crying. "How could you? How could you destroy her like this?" "She destroyed herself," Ryan said. "I'm just telling the truth. The truth isn't always kind." "No, but it's necessary." Henry was quieter. Called a week after the story broke and said simply, "You did the right thing. I should have done it years ago." "You knew?" "Not that it was Catherine, but I knew Reed was innocent. I let him take the fall because it was convenient, because it protected the company." Henry's voice was heavy. "I've lived with that guilt for 13 years. Maybe now I can finally stop." Victoria stopped speaking to Ryan for a month, not out of anger exactly, but exhaustion. They'd torn open too many wounds, exposed too many lies. Sometimes distance was the only way to heal. Ryan homeschooled Jamie for the rest of the year. They worked through math and reading at the kitchen table, took breaks to play soccer in the park, talked about Catherine and Emma and truth and lies. "Do you hate her now?" Jamie asked one afternoon. "Now that you know everything?" Ryan thought about it, really thought. "No," he said finally. "I'm angry. I'm disappointed. But I don't hate her. She was a person who made terrible choices. That doesn't erase the good things. The love, the life we had. Can both be true? That she was good and bad?" "Yeah, buddy, both can be true. People are complicated like that." Summer came. Ryan and Jamie took a road trip, just the two of them. Drove down the coast, stopped at beaches, ate too much ice cream, didn't talk about Catherine or Emma or any of it. Just existed as themselves, two people trying to figure out how to move forward. In August, Victoria called. "I'm ready to talk," she said. "If you are." They met at a restaurant halfway between Portland and the Arden estate, neutral territory. Victoria looked different, lighter somehow, despite everything. "I've been in therapy," she said, "working through the Catherine stuff. My therapist says I was using the investigation as a way to avoid dealing with my own grief." "Were you?" "Probably. It was easier to search for answers than to accept that my sister was gone, that she'd chosen to leave, that she'd hurt people." Victoria picked at her food. "But the truth is, I lost Catherine twice. Once when she disappeared, and again when I found out who she really was. I know the feeling." "Do you?" "You only knew Emma. I knew both, and I keep trying to reconcile them. The sister I loved with the person who let Thomas Reed die." Victoria's eyes were wet. "I can't do it. They don't fit together." "Maybe they're not supposed to. Maybe Catherine and Emma were different people." "That's the problem. They weren't. They were the same person making different choices, which means the sister I loved was always capable of what Emma did. I just didn't want to see it." They sat in silence. Finally, Ryan said, "I'm sorry for releasing the documents, for making this public. I should have asked you first." "No, you did the right thing. I'm grieving, again, for a sister who never existed the way I thought she did." "Do your parents hate me?" "They're hurt, confused. But they don't hate you." Victoria managed a small smile. "Henry actually said he respects you for having the courage to do what he couldn't. And you?" "I'm working on it. Ask me again in 6 months." They finished the meal, paid, walked out to the parking lot together. "Jamie asks about you," Ryan said. "Wonders when he'll see his Aunt Victoria again." "I want to see him. I need a little more time to figure out how to be his aunt without making it about Catherine." Take all the time you need. Victoria hugged him then, quick and fierce. Thank you for loving her when she needed it, even if she didn't deserve it. Everyone deserves love, Ryan said, even cowards. Fall came. Jamie started at a new school, one where nobody knew about the Arden scandal. He made friends, joined the soccer team, slowly stopped looking over his shoulder for judgment. Ryan sold the apartment. Too many memories, too much weight. They moved to a smaller place closer to Jamie's school, and Ryan took a job with a different delivery company. Fresh start. Margaret and Henry visited once a month. The relationship was different now, more honest, less idealized. They talked about Catherine's flaws alongside her strengths, acknowledged that loving someone didn't mean pretending they were perfect. One Saturday in October, Ryan took Jamie to the cemetery where Emma was buried. They hadn't been since the memorial, hadn't talked about whether they should. But Jamie had asked. The headstone said Emma Hale, beloved wife and mother. Ryan had considered changing it after everything came out, adding Catherine's name, making it complete. But in the end, he'd left it. Emma was who she'd chosen to be. That deserved to be honored, even alongside the truth. Jamie set down flowers, daisies, Emma's favorite, stood there for a long moment, then said, I wish I could ask her why she did it all. Me too, buddy. Do you think she'd tell the truth if she could? Ryan thought about the letter, about the journals, about all the pieces of Catherine and Emma scattered across the years. I think she'd try, but I also think she'd struggle. The truth was hard for her. Why? Because it meant admitting she wasn't who she wanted to be, that she'd made mistakes she couldn't fix. Jamie knelt, touched the headstone gently. I love you, Mom, even though you messed up, even though you hurt people. He looked at Ryan. That's okay to say, right? Yeah, that's exactly right. They sat there for a while, father and son, saying goodbye to a woman who'd been more complicated than either of them would ever fully understand. On the drive home, Jamie said, Dad? Yeah? Do you think you'll ever get married again? The question surprised Ryan. I don't know, maybe someday. Why? Because I think Mom would want you to be happy. The real happy. Not the pretend kind. Ryan pulled over, looked at his son. 9 years old and already wise in ways that broke Ryan's heart. What makes you think I'm pretending? You get this look sometimes, like you're sad but trying not to show it, like Mom used to get when she thought I wasn't looking. Jamie's voice was small. I don't want you to be sad forever. Ryan pulled Jamie close. I'm not sad forever, just sad sometimes. That's different. Promise? Promise. They drove home, made dinner together, watched a movie. Normal Saturday night things that felt almost easy now. Later, after Jamie was asleep, Ryan's phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. Thinking about you both. Hope you're okay. Ryan smiled, typed back. We are. You? Getting there. Slowly. That's all any of us can do. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally. I'm ready to see Jamie. Whenever works for you. Ryan felt something loosen in his chest. Next weekend? We could meet at that park by the estate. Perfect. I'll bring a soccer ball. He'll like that. The following weekend, they drove to Connecticut. Victoria was waiting at the park, soccer ball under her arm, nervous smile on her face. Jamie ran to her without hesitation, and they kicked the ball back and forth while Ryan sat on a bench watching. Margaret and Henry showed up after 20 minutes carrying a picnic basket. They spread a blanket, unpacked sandwiches, and fruit and cookies Margaret had made. It wasn't perfect. There were awkward silences, moments where grief hung heavy between them, but there were also laughs. Jamie telling stories about his new school, Henry teaching him a card trick, Victoria and Ryan talking carefully about work, about life, about small things that didn't hurt. At one point, Margaret took Ryan aside. Thank you for bringing him, for not shutting us out after everything. You're his grandparents. He needs you. Even after what we did, what we allowed to happen? Ryan looked at her. This woman who'd lost her daughter twice, who'd spent years in limbo, who was trying desperately to build something good from the wreckage. Everyone deserves a chance to do better, he said. Even the Ardens. Margaret's smile was watery. Catherine chose well, when she chose you. I'm not sure she chose me. I think we found each other by accident. Maybe, but she stayed. That was a choice, and it was the right one. They packed up as the sun started setting. Jamie hugged everyone goodbye, made Victoria promise to come to his next soccer game. On the drive home, he fell asleep in the back seat, exhausted and happy. Ryan drove through the darkening evening, thinking about choices, about how Catherine had chosen to destroy her father's company, chosen to let Thomas Reed take the fall, chosen to run rather than face consequences, but also chosen to become Emma, chosen Ryan, chosen to love Jamie with everything she had. Bad choices and good choices tangled together like thread in a knot you couldn't unpick. A year passed, then another. The story faded from the news. Arden Holdings quietly dissolved. Henry and Margaret sold the Connecticut house, moved to something smaller, started a foundation in Catherine's name for environmental justice. Thomas Reed's children released a statement thanking them for clearing their father's name. Daniel reached out once, asking if he could meet Jamie. Ryan said no. Not yet. Maybe someday, but not yet. Some connections were too complicated to force. Jamie turned 11, then 12, started middle school, made the soccer team, asked questions about his mother that Ryan answered as honestly as he could. Some days Jamie seemed okay with the complicated truth. Other days he was angry, confused, grieving for a mother he'd never fully known. Ryan let him feel all of it. Victoria became a regular presence in their lives. Sunday dinners, soccer games, casual texts about nothing important. She and Ryan built something. Not quite friendship, not quite family, something in between. A relationship defined by shared loss and the slow, difficult work of forgiveness. Ryan dated occasionally. Nothing serious. Coffee with a woman from his route, dinner with someone Victoria set him up with. Nice people. Normal people. None of them understood the complicated grief he carried, and he didn't expect them to. On a Tuesday in April, 3 years after finding the portrait, Ryan delivered a package to a house in northwest Portland. The woman who answered was maybe 35, paint-stained apron, kind smile. "Thanks," she said, signing for the package. "You're a lifesaver. I needed these canvases yesterday." "You're an artist?" Ryan asked. "Trying to be. You?" "Just a guy who drives a van." She laughed. "I like honest work. Want to come in for coffee? I just made a fresh pot." Ryan hesitated, thought about saying no, about keeping his distance, about protecting himself from complication. Then he thought about Emma's letter. "I loved you before I knew you," about her choice to risk everything for connection, for love, for the chance at something real. "Yeah," Ryan said. "Coffee sounds good." Her name was Alice. She painted landscapes, taught art classes at the community center, had a dog named Soup. They talked for an hour, easy conversation that didn't feel forced. When Ryan left, she asked if he'd like to get dinner sometime. "Maybe," he said. "Can I think about it?" "Of course, I'll be here." Ryan drove home, made dinner with Jamie, helped with homework. Later, after Jamie was asleep, he pulled out the box of Emma's things. Looked through it one more time, the journals, the letters, the photographs of a woman with 2 names. He'd kept it all these years, couldn't bring himself to throw it away. But he also couldn't keep carrying it like a weight. Ryan took the box to the garage, put it on a high shelf. Not gone, but not front and center anymore. A part of his past he could visit when needed, but didn't have to live in. Then he texted Alice, "Dinner sounds great. When works for you?" She replied immediately. "Friday? There's this Italian place I love. Perfect." Ryan set down his phone. Went to check on Jamie, found him sleeping peacefully. Stood in the doorway looking at his son, this kid who'd inherited Emma's eyes and Catherine's stubborn streak and was somehow turning out okay despite everything. Maybe that was the point. Not to understand every choice, not to forgive every mistake, but to take what was good and build forward, to honor the love that was real while acknowledging the lies that surrounded it. Ryan pulled Jamie's door closed quietly, went to his own room, lay in bed staring at the ceiling, thinking about Friday, about Alice, about the possibility of starting something new without erasing what came before. Emma would have wanted this, would have wanted him to keep living, keep loving, keep trying. Not because she deserved his loyalty, but because life, messy, complicated, painful life, was worth living anyway. Outside, Portland rain started falling. the familiar sound that had been the soundtrack to his years with Emma, to the life they'd built together. Ryan listened to it, feeling the weight of grief shift slightly. Not disappearing, just making room for something else alongside it. His phone buzzed. Text from Jamie's room. "Can't sleep. Can we watch the bike video?" Ryan smiled. The video of Emma teaching Jamie to ride, her laugh echoing across the years. They'd watched it 100 times, maybe 100 more. "Come on out," Ryan texted back. Jamie appeared in pajamas, hair sticking up. They settled on the couch and Ryan queued up the video. Watched Emma run alongside their wobbling son, cheering him on, believing in him even when he didn't believe in himself. "She was a good mom," Jamie said quietly. "Even with all the other stuff, she was good at that part." Yeah, Ryan said. "She really was." The video ended. Ryan didn't replay it, just sat there with his son, both of them holding space for a woman who'd been flawed and frightened and human, who'd made terrible choices and beautiful ones, who'd loved them in the only way she knew how. "Dad," Jamie said, "I think you should go on that date Friday." Ryan looked at him. "Oh yeah?" "Yeah. You deserve to be happy. For real this time." "What makes you think I wasn't happy before?" Jamie gave him a look. Emma's look, the one that said, "I see through you." Because happy people don't carry boxes of sad stuff in the garage. Ryan laughed despite himself. "When did you get so smart?" "I had a good teacher." Jamie stood, headed back to his room. At the door, he turned. "I love you, Dad." "Love you too, buddy." Ryan sat alone in the dark living room, the rain still falling outside, thinking about Friday, about Alice, about the terrifying possibility of letting someone new in. Someone who wouldn't know about Catherine or Emma or any of the complicated history. Someone he could tell the truth to from the beginning. It wouldn't be easy, might not even work. But maybe that was okay. Maybe love didn't have to be built on perfect foundations. Maybe it just had to be honest. Friday came. Ryan met Alice at the Italian place. They talked for 3 hours. He told her about Emma, about the discovery, about the complicated grief he was still working through. She listened without judgment, shared her own losses, her own mistakes. At the end of the night, walking to their cars, Alice said, "I'd like to see you again, if you're interested." Ryan thought about Emma's letter, about choosing to survive, to live, to risk everything for connection. "Yeah," he said. "I'm interested." They went on a second date, then a third. Ryan introduced her to Jamie, who liked her dog more than he liked her, but that was fine. Slowly, carefully, Ryan started building something new. Not a replacement for what he'd lost, but something separate, something his. Victoria noticed, called him on a Sunday morning, voice knowing. "You sound different." "Different how?" "Lighter, less haunted." "I'm seeing someone. It's new." "That's good, Ryan. Really good." A pause. "Does she know? About everything?" "Yeah. I told her on the first date. Figured if she was going to run, better she do it early." "And she didn't run?" "Not yet." Victoria laughed. "Catherine would be happy for you. The real Catherine, underneath all the fear and lies. She'd want this." Ryan wasn't sure that was true, but he wanted to believe it. So he said, "Thanks." Months passed. Ryan and Alice got serious. She met Margaret and Henry, who loved her immediately. Met Victoria, who was more cautious but eventually came around. Jamie started calling her Alice instead of Dad's friend Alice, which felt like progress. One night, a year after they'd started dating, Alice asked, "Do you think you'll ever stop loving Emma?" They were lying in bed, late-night conversation in the dark. Ryan thought about the question. "I don't think love works like that," he said. "I don't think it just stops, but it changes. Becomes something different, something I can live with." "That's not a no." "No, it's not a no." He turned to face her. "Does that bother you?" "I don't know yet. Ask me again in a year." Ryan smiled. "Fair enough." They fell asleep tangled together, and Ryan dreamed of Emma for the first time in months. Not a nightmare, just a memory. Her teaching Jamie to ride his bike, laughing when he veered into the grass, cheering when he finally got it. When Ryan woke up, he wasn't sad, just grateful he'd had those years, even if they'd been built on lies. Jamie turned 13. started high school, joined the debate team, which made sense given how much he liked arguing. He talked about his mother less, but thought about her more, Ryan could tell. Wrote an essay for English class about identity and truth and the complicated legacy of people who hurt others while trying to do good. His teacher gave him an A and asked if she could share it with the class. Jamie said yes. Victoria started dating someone, a woman named Rachel who worked in environmental law, who understood complicated families and didn't judge. They came to Jamie's debate tournaments, sat with Ryan and Alice in the audience, cheered when Jamie won. Margaret and Henry grew older, sold their last property holdings, retired properly, spent their days gardening and reading and visiting Jamie when they could. The foundation they'd started in Catherine's name had grown, was doing real work cleaning up contaminated sites, fighting development projects that hurt communities, turning Catherine's mistakes into something useful. On the 4th anniversary of finding the portrait, Ryan took Jamie to Emma's grave again. They brought flowers, stood in silence. "I've been thinking," Jamie said, "about whether we should add Catherine's name to the headstone, make it complete. What do you think?" I think Emma was who she wanted to be, and we should let her be that, even if it's not the whole truth." Jamie touched the stone gently. "The truth is in us, in what we know. We don't need it written down." Ryan felt a surge of pride, so strong it hurt. "You're a good kid, you know that?" "I learned from the best." They stood there together, father and son, saying goodbye to a ghost that was finally starting to fade. Not forgetting, just making peace. On the drive home, Jamie said, "Are you going to marry Alice?" "I don't know, maybe." "Would that be okay with you?" "Yeah. She makes you happy. The real kind, not the pretend kind." Jamie smiled. "Plus, Soup is a great dog." "Those are good reasons." "Are you going to ask her soon?" "Why, you want me to?" "I want you to stop being scared. Mom spent her whole life scared. You don't have to do the same." The wisdom of 13-year-olds. Ryan wondered when Jamie had gotten so old. 6 months later, Ryan proposed. Alice said yes. They got married in a small ceremony at the park where Ryan and Jamie had played soccer, where Victoria had rejoined their lives, where pieces of broken things had started fitting together again. Jamie was the best man. Cried during the vows, which he pretended was allergies, but nobody believed him. Victoria gave a toast about second chances and chosen family. Margaret and Henry danced together, looking younger than they had in years. It wasn't perfect. There were empty spaces where Emma should have been, questions Jamie would always carry, grief that surfaced at unexpected moments. But there was also joy. Real, uncomplicated joy that didn't require lies to sustain it. Ryan and Alice honeymooned in Portland, Maine, visited Patricia Reed, who'd invited them after hearing about the wedding. She served tea, showed them photos of Thomas, talked about how clearing his name had allowed her kids to finally heal. "Your wife did something terrible," Patricia said. "But you did something right. You told the truth when it was hard. That matters." On their last night, sitting in a hotel overlooking the ocean, Alice asked, "Do you think about her? About what your life would be like if she hadn't died?" "Sometimes," Ryan admitted, "but I don't know if that life would have survived the truth. We were built on secrets. Eventually they would have crushed us." "Do you think she knew that?" "Maybe. Maybe that's why she never planned to tell me." Alice was quiet for a moment. "I'm glad you told me. Everything, right from the start." "Me too." They watched the waves crash against the shore, two people building something honest in the wreckage of something broken. Years passed. Jamie graduated high school, went to college on the scholarship from Catherine's foundation. Studied environmental law, wanting to finish what his mother started, but do it better, cleaner, without the casualties. Victoria and Rachel got married. Margaret passed away peacefully in her sleep at 82, Henry following 6 months later. They left everything to Jamie, who donated most of it to the foundation and kept enough for graduate school. Ryan and Alice had a daughter. Named her Sophie, not Catherine, not Emma, just Sophie. A person who'd get to be exactly who she was without the weight of anyone else's history. On Sophie's 5th birthday, Jamie came home from law school for the weekend. They had cake, played in the yard, watched Sophie open presents with the same fierce joy Emma had brought to everything. That night, after Sophie was asleep, Jamie asked Ryan if he could see the box. The one from the garage, the one with all of Emma's things. I haven't looked at it in years, Ryan said, not sure what kind of shape it's in. I just want to see her handwriting. Remember what it looked like. They went to the garage. The box was dusty but intact. Jamie opened it carefully, pulled out one of the journals, read a few pages in silence. She really loved us, he said finally. You can tell. Even through all the guilt and fear, you can tell. Yeah, she did. Do you forgive her for all of it? Ryan thought about the question. 4 years ago, he would have said no. 2 years ago, maybe. Now? I forgive her for being human, he said, for making mistakes, for choosing survival over honesty. I don't forgive what she did to Thomas Reed. I don't think that's mine to forgive, but I forgive her for lying to me, for building our life on secrets, because I think she was doing the best she could with the person she was. Jamie nodded, put the journal back carefully, closed the box. I think I'm ready to let this go, not forget, just stop carrying it. What do you want to do with it? I don't know, maybe give the journals to the foundation? Let them be part of Catherine's story? The whole story, not just the good parts. That's a good idea. They carried the box inside. The next morning, Jamie drove it to the foundation offices. Donated everything, journals, letters, photographs, all of it. A complete record of a complicated woman who'd done terrible things and beautiful things and spent her whole life trying to figure out which was which. The foundation archived it all, made it available to researchers, to people studying corporate corruption and whistleblowing and the cost of speaking truth to power. Catherine Arden became a case study. Not a hero, not a villain, just a human who'd made choices and lived with consequences. Ryan read some of the academic papers that cited her journals, saw his name occasionally, saw Jamie's, saw their lives reduced to footnotes in someone else's analysis. It should have bothered him. Instead, it felt freeing, like finally setting down weight he'd been carrying for too long. Life moved forward. Sophie started school. Jamie passed the bar exam. Victoria and Rachel adopted a daughter. Ryan and Alice celebrated their 10th anniversary. The story of Catherine and Emma faded into family history, something they talked about occasionally but didn't define themselves by. On a Tuesday in November, 20 years after Ryan had delivered that package to the Arden estate, he found himself driving past the building. It had been sold years ago, turned into a private school. The portrait was gone, donated to a museum along with the rest of the estate. Ryan pulled over, looked at the building, thought about the man he'd been that day, younger, sadder, still raw from loss. How finding that portrait had torn open his grief and forced him to rebuild everything he thought he knew. He'd hated it at the time. Hated the truth, hated the complication, hated that his simple story of love and loss had turned into something impossible to explain. But sitting there now, older and different and happy in ways he hadn't been in years, Ryan found himself grateful. Not for the lies, not for what Emma had done, but for the journey those lies had forced him on, the people he'd met, the family he'd built, the truth he'd learned to live with. His phone rang. Alice asking if he'd pick up milk on the way home. Sophie in the background yelling about a school project she needed supplies for. Normal, beautiful chaos. Yeah, Ryan said. I'll get it. Be home soon. He drove away from the Arden estate for the last time, heading toward the life he'd built from the wreckage of the one that came before. Not perfect, not uncomplicated, but honest and real, and his. Emma would have understood, Catherine would have envied it, and Ryan had finally learned to live in both truths at once, to love someone imperfect, to forgive without forgetting, to carry grief and joy in the same breath. It wasn't the ending he'd imagined, but it was the one he'd chosen, and in the end, maybe that was enough.